There's no time.
The time is
13
o'clock.
Hey, you guys. It's episode 162.
Yeah, we got Dennis with us.
Look who's joining us on the show.
It's the Dennis Rader bobblehead. This is given to Jeannie.
It was an
for her
early birthday present, yes.
Yeah, from Sophie.
Yeah.
Our friend Sophie gave that.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, thanks, Sophie. This
I know, thank you so much.
It's like a limited edition. Came in a box with it's like numbered and everything.
Let me see this. This is from Psycho Killer.
Yeah. Yeah, look at it showing the back. Yeah. I think it's what, 50 something out of 300?
Yeah, numbered and everything.
Yeah.
Now I have to go to this website and see what other ones they got, because this one, I opened this up and I just like laughed my ass off.
Serial killer bobbleheads.
I was like,
Now when I do the voice, when I do Dennis's voice, I'll talk. You know, I can.
You can like put it. You
yeah.
can make his little head shake around.
Be like, Jenny.
Oh my god.
I always knew that they would make a bobblehead of me. I'm a cultural icon. All on the back of my, sexual problem. Sexual problem. Yeah.
Well, Dennis, you should be very proud.
I'm very proud. Very, very proud.
I bet you are. Maybe they'll make a Funko Pop of you as well. I thought they probably had. Do they have those of serial killers? They have one of like every other conceivable fictional character.
They're not cool enough. They're not on the serial killer train yet. They're, you know how they are. They're trying to make money and trying to, put on a good face for the kids. And, they're more into superheroes and things like that. And, lame shit. One day when they get cool and they want to make money, they might make a Dennis Rader, Funko Pop thing. What'd you call it?
Yeah. It's a
Funko Pop.
It's a Funko Pop.
Yeah. That's cheap little things, We already had one of these high-class companies come make a bobblehead of me. It's a lot better than a Funko Pop. It's solid, solid. Those other things are hollow. This thing's solid, weighs a ton. Represents, how solid I am as a man. Yeah. Anyway, get back to the show, Jim.
Thank you very much, Dennis. I'm sure we will be hearing your insight later on in the show, because we're doing another, technically not a serial killer, more like a mass murderer, because most of his murders happened at one time. This is Richard Speck. Now,
him, yeah. Dressing like a woman. Okay.
Yeah, you know all about that.
Yeah. I know some guys that did time with him, Can't keep that dick out of his mouth.
That is very true.
A real man wouldn't do that, Jenny.
Thank you, Dennis.
Real man might dress up as a woman, and get down inside, hole in the ground, take a selfie.
Of course. I would never suggest otherwise.
That's just art, It's like a message to the police. It's not, it doesn't mean that, I like to dress up as women. It's just
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah. It's a form of communication.
Okay, I gotcha.
Artistic expression.
But yeah, so Richard Speck is probably, I think he's been like our most requested.
And I didn't put a dick in my mouth. I'm going to make this clear. Mm-hmm. I didn't put a dick in my mouth.
Okay. I'm not sure.
I wouldn't do that, Jenny. I wouldn't do that, Jenny.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Look at it. I know you probably can't see it because it's too small, but he has like a little knife in his hand, and his other hand he has a little cross.
Yeah.
Because, that's how they caught him.
I don't think I ever cut a bitch, though. I don't think I ever cut a bitch. Just strangle a bitch,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how.
Did have a knife, but I didn't. I don't think I used it.
Well,
a long time ago.
You've moved on from that.
Mm.
But yeah, I think Richard Speck has probably been our most requested true crime topic. And I was going to get around to it. I was actually going to do it next month, but then I was looking at the topics for this week, and I was just kind of like, fuck it, let's do Richard Speck this week, because I had been wanting to talk about him, because this dude's a fucking freakazoid.
Yeah.
But yeah, so before we do that, let's get into just a couple of little shout outs like we usually do. As I said, thank you very much, Sophie, for my early birthday present. 'Cause my birthday's on the 26th, which I guess that'll be 2 days after this show goes up on Tuesday, the 24th. So this is my little early birthday present, and thank you very much for that. Also want to thank our newest patron, whose name is Keith. Hey there, man. Thank you very much for your support. And also a big thank you to Jason, who sent us a very generous PayPal donation just this morning.
Yeah, thanks, Jason.
Thank you very much for your support. It really
Yeah,
does
it's
help
like
a lot.
$50, like $50.
Yeah, it's like really does help a lot.
Yeah.
And, so.
That was a significant portion of our damn YouTube money.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, YouTube doesn't pay us that much.
It has to be, well, they pay you monthly if it's over $100.
Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, it's
It's just once it goes over $100, they pay.
Most of it's from patrons.
Yeah, it is.
Patrons
Most
and
of it
book
is, yeah.
sales.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, like I said, occasional graphic design work. I
Right.
get some money from that, too. Again, Faceless Villain 3 is up in all 3 formats, print, ebook, audio, so go check it out. I think I mentioned last week, but the Conspiranormal show that I did, the Conspiranormal podcast with Adam Sane, I did an interview on there where I talked about a bunch of the cases that are in Faceless Villain 3, and that is up. I'll put a link in the description below.
Bitch didn't talk about me either. You
Well,
didn't
because
talk
they
about
caught your dumbass.
me. When you're not talking about me, when you're not talking about me, Jenny, I feel lonely.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I'm-
We should have gone
Yeah.
to church together. I wish you and me and you went to church together.
Oh, shit.
You like to take pictures, Jenny? I'll let you get back to the show.
Oh, I was going to say,
I'll let you get back to the show.
What is that leading
I
to?
don't mean to be butting in, you know. I'm a humble man.
Look at his little
Just
head.
saying.
Look at his little head.
Tell him I'm a humble man.
Oh, my God.
That's
Am
a
I
good
even
prop.
going to be able to get through
That's a
this
good
show
prop.
without fucking cracking
I
up?
look and I see him and I get inspired to channel the
To
living
just do
spirit.
His little voice. Well,
Channeling
like I
the
said,
living spirit of fucking. It's like that movie Freaks, you know, where she could astrally project and
Yeah.
channel people and images and shit. That's my link with
Dennis.
With Dennis and Crussell.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, no, that just came out of my head. Okay.
All right. And the only other thing that I wanted to shout out was, as I said before, one of my horror fiction compilations, short story collections, The Associated Villainies, I just recently put out a second edition, which has 4 extra stories. And, I corrected anything that was wrong. I made a new cover design. I did all this other stuff. And the print version and ebook of that is up. The audio version has been uploaded, but it's still undergoing quality control, so that'll probably be like another week or 2 before that's up. And I'm also working on my other short story collection, Hopeful Monsters, and the print version of that is almost done, and then I have to do an ebook, and then I'm going to record an audio book version of that as well. So that will also be out in a couple of months. Like I said, I'm consolidating all my fiction and doing audiobook versions of it.
Yeah, and better audio. Well, there wasn't even audio of that before. And then
Yeah, I never did my fiction.
next, we're going to consolidate all the Steve Mera stuff. There's going to be 2 new Steve Mera stories, large stories. Before they would have come out as books. But we're going to have those 2 new stories, at least 2, maybe 3.
Yeah, depending on how long they are.
And the other 2, like Fire and Whispers and Rochdale Poltergeist, they will all be in a collection, and it will all be on audiobook and a better version of the audio because we have the new equipment.
Yeah.
So, we're consolidating the catalog. And,
and like trying to
updating
improve everything.
Yeah, and updating all the audio quality.
Yeah. So that'll be like the next project, probably next year sometime. But yeah, so that's all that's going on there. I think that's pretty much all the shout outs that we had. I think that's all I can remember. So let's start talking about Richard Speck.
Yeah.
Like I said, technically he's not classified as a serial killer because most of his iconic crimes, he killed at least 8 women, but he killed them all at once, like in one night. However, prior to that, he did commit several rapes and at least one murder that they suspect was him, but, couldn't prove it.
Yeah.
So, I guess you could kind of classify him as a serial killer, even though he didn't really operate the same.
He didn't confess to it?
No, not that I know of. There is some video of this guy floating around, which is super special. It didn't kind of come to light until later, maybe after he died. even. But yeah, I'll get into that later on because that's like some pretty creepy shit.
You're talking about his prison videos?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You've seen those, right?
Of course, as Dennis, I see all that kind of stuff.
Dennis sees all.
Yeah.
So let's talk about...
Bitch dressing like a woman. Bitch dressing like a woman.
He did later,
in prison.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dick's in his mouth. They said I dressed as a woman, but it was for artistic purposes.
Sure, I gotcha.
Yeah, just making that clear.
You're protesting about that a lot, Dennis.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
No, I'm not. Shut up.
Just making things clear.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate you doing that. All right, so let's talk about Richard Speck, this lowlife. We'll start at the beginning of his sad, miserable life. And here we go. So, Richard Speck was actually born in Kirkwood, which is like a rural part of Illinois, about 6 miles southwest of Monmouth. He was actually born the day before Pearl Harbor, like the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And I heard like a bit of an interview with him where he said like, the day before I was born, and then the next day, like all hell broke loose and it hasn't stopped since. So yeah, I guess he kind of saw himself.
He's very important.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Well, he did have kind of like a thing like that where he thought that he was like destined to make headlines, and in a bad way. He wasn't one of those people that's like, oh, I'm going to walk on the moon or I'm going to be famous for good shit. He seemed like he was always like, oh, I'm going to shock the world. I'm going to do something
Every time
really
I saw any video of this guy back before, before the infamous videos, the prison videos came out, he always came across as just like really white trash and kind of a wannabe country western star in a way, kind of Johnny Cash, kind of like a wannabe Johnny Cash, but a very low budget version of it. That's the way he always kind of came across to me. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's just my
he did seem like he was kind of like wanted to be like a low rent tough guy.
Yeah, and
kind of thing,
and like he's a man of mystery and all that kind of, but really no intellect to speak of.
No, he seemed like kind of an
just
idiot.
Dumbass.
Yeah,
really.
To be honest with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he's born in kind of rural Illinois. He was actually the 7th of 8 children. His dad's name was Benjamin Franklin Speck. Very nice. And his mom's name was Mary. Now, Speck had a younger sister named Carolyn, that was only 2 years younger. But their other siblings were like way older than them. So, you know what I mean? So there was the 2 of them young, and then there was like some older ones. He also had an older brother named Robert who died when he was 23 in a car wreck. Now, when Speck was born, his dad worked as a packer in a place, Western Stoneware in Monmouth, and also did kind of like odd jobs. He was a farmer and a logger. Now, his dad was, by all accounts, very close to Richard Speck. I mean, they were like, and he really, really idolized his dad. Like, his dad would take him fishing, and his family were like really hardworking. They didn't have a lot of money and stuff, and obviously they had like a shit ton of kids. And they had just like this kind of little modest house and stuff, but they were always like working really hard to like provide for the kids and stuff like that. So in the early days, they were poor, but it wasn't like an abusive relationship or anything. Now the mom was, they were Presbyterians, and she was pretty hardcore religious, as in one of those no smoking, no drinking, no nothing kind of people.
Yeah.
One source that I read said that even the dad got in trouble one time. They were like at a fish fry or a barbecue or something, and he drank a beer, and she just like reamed him a new asshole. Right. You know what I mean? Because just like no alcohol was allowed, like, so there was that whole thing too.
Yeah.
But
Jenny, he doesn't know how to keep his woman in check. Who actually wore the pants in the family? This may be where the problems began with Richard. You know what I mean? Respect. Because a man has to wear the pants in the family. You can't let the woman just tell you what to do. Like, if a man wants to drink a beer, he drinks a beer. If a man wants to wear women's clothes... No, never mind. Never mind.
I've said too much.
Never mind. Change the subject. Go ahead, Jay.
But yeah, by all accounts, like, his mom was very religious and very strict. But like I said, they weren't abusive. And later on, he did seem to idolize his mother, like find her very saintly and stuff like that. Now, a problem arose when his father died when he was 6 years old. The dad had a heart attack when he was only 53. Now, after the death of his father, Speck seemed to, he was 6 years old, but he seemed to like regress, like back to toddlerhood. Like some of his teachers said that he would be in class and he would like start eating crayons. He would start like just acting like a baby, like to get attention from his teachers and stuff. So the death of his dad like really, really affected him because apparently they were very close. And like I said, he was just a little kid at the time. He was 6 years old. Now, 2 or 3 years later, it happened that his mother, Mary, met this guy. He was a traveling insurance salesman, and he was from Texas, and his name was Carl August Rudolph Lindbergh. Now, they met on a train trip when she was going to Chicago. Now, by all accounts, Lindbergh was the complete opposite of Speck's real dad. This guy was a booze hound. He was a criminal. He had like a lot of, criminal history, generally of like forgery, drunk driving, that type of stuff.
That's not acceptable.
Not acceptable.
No, that's not acceptable. No.
Yeah.
There's rules, and a man has to follow certain rules.
Yeah, like what are some of those?
Well, you got to know how tall the grass can be. You have to know where the dog can be and where it can't be.
How long the leash has to be.
How long the leash has to be. There's many things. Many things. You must keep shit under control. That's why they hired me.
I didn't know you swore, Dennis.
Well, when it's serious issues, they hired me to, keep shit under control. And sometimes a man even have to keep these hoes under control, Jenny.
The hoes.
Yeah, these hoes. Yeah.
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 Well, if they're not helping you deal with your sexual problems.
I don't want to talk about my sexual problems right now.
Usually you're so forthcoming on that score, though.
I'm not ready.
Okay.
Not ready.
Maybe later on.
Maybe.
Like after a few more.
Maybe me and you can talk about sexual problems.
Jesus.
You have a camera?
This is getting out of hand, you guys.
I have a really nice church that I belong to. After hours, it's nice and quiet. Maybe me and you ought to hang out and play around on a computer.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Bring your camera.
Okay, sure. I'll get right on that.
Fuck you, Dennis. Leave her alone, bro.
Oh, shit.
I haven't been myself on the whole show. I've been Dennis
I know,
the whole
that's
show.
what I was going to say. Tom's like going to start developing a split personality. It's going to be like fucking... Ooh, it's going to be like that fucking scary movie with Anthony Hopkins in it, Magic, where it was like him in the ventriloquist. We got to do that movie.
That's all I need now is I need a Dennis Rader ventriloquist dummy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then like I said, you'll start to like develop a dual personality.
Yeah, no thanks.
Then I'll get murdered.
By the dummy.
So you guys know what happened.
And he's dressed up like a woman taking pictures of you and shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I picture happening.
Yeah.
See what I mean? See,
Yeah.
this is how it starts. So not only was the new dad, the stepdad, not only was he a drunk, not only was he a criminal with a 25-year-long rap sheet for various things, he also really, really hated Richard Speck. And like I said, Richard Speck was only probably 8 or 9 years old at the time.
This is probably the beginnings of his problem.
Yeah, it really does seem like it. Because like I said, before that, he seemed like a pretty normal kid. He wasn't a great student or anything. Like, he wasn't like super bright or anything. But he seemed like otherwise fairly
Bunch
normal.
of conflicts happened. His mom had all these fucking high standards. And he didn't really like his mom that much. But his dad probably defended him. He liked his dad. His dad died and replaced him. And then he got replaced with the antithesis of his dad. And the antithesis of what his mother believed in. So he started to see the world as like hypocrisy.
Yeah, I
You know
imagine that was probably it.
Right, well, she had all these rules, but now she's blowing them off for this guy. Women they're just all about dick. That's probably where this all began.
Yeah, possibly. And like I
Right.
said, he did really develop a very, very...
Hatred towards women.
Well, he had a really bad Madonna horror complex.
Yeah, okay.
Big time.
There it is right there.
Yeah, big time.
There it is right there.
And several psychologists said that. So the dad, would call him things like a gutter rat. He's like, I can't stand the sight of you, all this other kind of shit. So obviously not very good for a little kid.
His mom's preferring this new guy who's the opposite of what he's used to. His mom's preferring the new guy over him.
Yeah.
So he's trying to... So Speck feels he's being displaced by this guy who's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not only that, but because Lindbergh was from Texas, they all actually ended up moving to Texas. Now, they let Richard Speck stay. Him and his little sister, Carolyn, stayed with one of their older sisters, who was already older and married, in Monmouth, Illinois, so he could finish out the school year. But then they moved to Santo, Texas, which is about 40 miles west of Fort Worth. And then he started back at school going to the 3rd grade. And then after that, so not only does he have like a new dad who he hates, a whole new situation, but now, he's only 8 years old maybe, and he's forced to like move to Texas. He's moved away from everything he knew previously. So at this stage, after they moved to Texas, over the next like 12 years or so, they kept moving like from place to place, like from one poor neighborhood to another poor neighborhood. Because like I said, they didn't have a huge amount of money. The stepdad, Lindbergh, was, as I said, a drunk. He was just kind of like not there a lot of the time and shit like that. Richard Speck was apparently, he had vision problems, but he wouldn't tell anybody about them, and he wouldn't wear glasses. So he would go to school and he couldn't really see anything, but he wouldn't tell anybody because he was like really shy and he didn't want people looking at him. So he didn't do very well in school because he couldn't see what the fuck was going on and wouldn't wear any glasses. Now, he starts 9th grade in 1957, but he failed every single subject. And in January 1958, he dropped out just after his 16th birthday. Now, one thing that he had done starting when he was age 12 was one way that he would get back at his stepdad was when his stepdad was out, he would raid his liquor cabinet. So he started getting drunk when he was 12 years old. Now, by the time he was 15 or 16, he was getting drunk pretty much every day. And he had also kind of fallen in with this other crowd of boys that introduced him to like marijuana and various pills, and started kind of teaching him how to do like basic little criminal activities, like how to break into places and like various scams and things like that. So he's already getting in with a bad crowd at this point. His first arrest was at age 13, actually. This was trespassing. But he had like a whole bunch of other arrests over the next few years, mostly for minor shit. It was just like, burglaries, exposing himself, just shit like that. He also started, when he got a bit older and started hanging out with these other boys, he also started frequenting prostitutes, and getting into sex with the older girls that they hung out with. They think that this was about the time that he developed the Madonna horror complex. Because like I said, he didn't have quite the resentment toward his mother that a lot of serial killers have. He sort of did, but then he also sort of saw her as like saintly and pure. So if a woman was quote unquote easy or was not like his mother, then she didn't mean anything. Then he had contempt for her. You know what I mean? So everyone was either like his mom or just a whore that you could, do whatever you wanted to with.
Yeah, but I guarantee you he had some of that, he had some anger towards her too. With the
I'm sure he did. I'm sure he did.
All this shit's getting confused in his mind. It's just kind of a general... He probably has an idealized version of what a woman should be, but then he starts seeing these bad examples of hookers and shit, but deep down he thinks they're all about the same.
Yeah, I definitely think that's
probably what's going on in him, because he's probably like, my mom in his subconscious, he's like, my mom pretended to have all these fucking...
But then she married this guy that was like the opposite.
High moral values, but she didn't live up to that.
Because like I said, she was like no drinking, no smoking, no anything, and then she married a drunk.
Right.
Who was also abusive, not only abusive toward the children, but also abusive toward her.
Right.
I'm not sure if it was physically or just emotionally, but it doesn't really matter in this context because they're both bad.
Yes, he starts to see that like, sex is power.
Yeah.
That's how he's reading into it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, Richard Speck actually gets a job as a laborer at the 7-Up bottling company in Dallas, and he worked there for about 3 years. Now, in October of 1961, he met this 15-year-old girl named Shirley Malone. They met at the Texas State Fair, and they started dating. Now, they were only dating for 3 weeks, and she got pregnant.
Damn.
So this was the early 60s,
Yeah.
so they got married.
Right.
So she moves in with Richard Speck, who still lived at home at this point, moved in with him, his mom, and his younger sister, Carolyn, and Carolyn's husband. Oh, I think Carolyn was the older sister. So Carolyn and Carolyn's husband, the mom and whoever. Now, by this point, the mom and the stepfather had separated. So Lindbergh had moved away, and he'd moved to California. So he wasn't in Richard Speck's life anymore. So he went back to, because I guess when the mom had married Lindbergh, Speck had taken his last name for a little while because he was still a little kid, and that's just what you did back then. But he reverted back to his dad's name, like after that guy left and after he got married. Now, as should not be surprising, Richard Speck was not super nice to his wife, emotionally abusive, physically abusive. He had a thing where he was convinced that she was cheating on him, even though there was no evidence that she was. But he was apparently allowed to go out to hookers all the time and would even do some shit like he would go pick up a hooker and then he would drive and park with the hooker in front of his house and then make sure that his wife was looking out the window and then would start making out with the hooker. And then he would drive off like laughing at her.
And
she was pregnant at the time.
He thought he was getting revenge somehow.
Yeah.
Because he thought she was cheating on him. That's probably what he
yeah,
was doing.
But you know what I
But
mean.
he's fucking paranoid. Yeah.
Well, see, it seems like one of those cases where this is a guy where he's a piece of shit.
Right,
so
so
he
he's projecting.
projects that on everybody. He thinks
he's
everyone else is as big a piece of shit as he is.
He's projecting.
Even though nobody, like hardly anybody is.
Yeah.
So he just feels like... So I think that in that way, they feel justified in acting like that because he said, oh, well, I'm just the only... Like, everybody else wants to be like that. Everybody else is like that.
Yeah.
I'm just the only one with the balls to, like, be like that.
He's got issues.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when his wife gave birth to their daughter, whose name was Robbie Lynn, she was born in 1962, and so she's in the hospital giving birth, and she had no fucking idea where Richard Speck was. Turned out later that he was in jail in McKinney, Texas. There had been like a big drunken fight at some bar everywhere, and he was serving a 22-day sentence for disturbing the peace. Okay, so the next time he came in contact with law enforcement was in July 1963. He was caught, he forged and cashed a coworker's paycheck, which was for $44. And then he burglarized a grocery store. He stole like a shit ton of cigarettes and started like, I don't know if this was the time that he did that, but what he would do is he would steal a bunch of cartons of cigarettes from a grocery store, and then he would sell them out of the trunk of his car, like in the parking lot.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Back in those days, cigarettes weren't worth much.
Yeah, so it's like what it seemed dumb, but it's like why in the parking lot? So you go up and buy cigarettes from a dude selling cigarettes out of a trunk of a car in a parking lot when you can just walk into the grocery store and buy them. And I'm sure
he was selling for a discount.
I guess he must have been, but it's like
selling for cheaper.
I don't know, man. I wouldn't trust
But
that shit.
they were cheap back then, so I don't know. You know, I don't know. The guy's just scraping bottom of the barrel.
I guess so, man.
Yeah, you get a pack of cigarettes for what, a quarter?
Probably. Now I'm kind of curious. This is like the early 60s.
Yeah.
Because it turned, like, so many of his robberies, like in this particular robbery where he stole this, where he robbed this grocery store, he stole, like, some beer and shit. He stole $3 in cash.
Yeah.
Which now I'm going to have to, like, look up. I'll probably put it down here, like, in writing, like, later on how much that is in today's money.
When I was a kid back in the 70s out in California, I remember riding around with my dad in his car, and they would buy a car for, like, about $1,000. He bought a Ford Cortina, and it was a piece of shit. I think it was like $1,000 or something, brand new. And then abandoned it when it broke because it was cheap. A gallon of gasoline was nothing. It was before the gas crisis.
Yeah.
And a pack of cigarettes was like 25 cents.
Yeah, I remember him being really cheap.
Yeah, my dad was just, working at a water pollution control plant. He wasn't a rich guy, but he worked for the city.
Yeah.
Of Long Beach. I think it was Long Beach, California. And, they would just buy cigarettes by the cartons. Nowadays, a carton of cigarettes is probably, what, $25, $30?
Money, yeah.
No,
more than that.
They're more than that now? Maybe 40?
Yeah, I think so. It depends on what kind of cigarettes they are.
They weren't taxed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They didn't have any kind of big heavy taxes on them. They were just like, it's like buying a pack of chewing gum.
Yeah.
They're,
I remember when my grandfather, because my grandfather used to smoke so much, you guys.
Yeah.
He got emphysema, so.
Yeah. They smoked back then, man. Leaded fuel.
Yeah, he would
and
just
run
buy.
around.
He smoked Salem's.
Yeah.
As did my grandmother. Now she quit later on, but he never did.
It was.
So he had to have an oxygen tank like later on, but he would buy just like 3-4 cartons at a time.
It was awesome. You know what I mean? I remember my mom had come back with just huge, big old stacks of steak. You know, all that shit was cheap.
Although I guess I don't think steak was that cheap because we hardly ever had it when
Back
I
in
was
the
growing
70s
up.
in California, it was cheap. Well,
Not here, I don't
not
think.
cheap.
Yeah.
Cheaper than it was today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's kind of like, well, special. You know what I mean?
We always had like
It's going to
cheap
cost
ass
you about
meat,
$40,
like
you know,
skirt steak and
down at
crap.
Sam's to get you a pack of steaks.
Yeah.
But they weren't that much in California. Like, and I'm talking about like 75, 76. That's the time period I can remember. Remember that they had all that, you know. It was a different time.
Yeah. I mean, I remember having steak every now and then, but usually if we had beef, it was like either hamburger or it was like one of those super, super cheap, tough cuts.
Really?
Yeah.
Damn, you must have been poor.
We were.
We were kind of poor for that period of time.
We always
but
had like Salisbury steak and all that kind
everybody was kind of moving up, and I remember we had all that. We had a lot of beef, a lot of chicken.
And we like never ate out. I mean, seriously, going to McDonald's was like a huge deal.
Going to McDonald's was a huge deal for you?
Yeah.
Damn. Going, for us.
And going to like Arthur Treacher's, that was like, oh my God, that was like, that would make my fucking year.
Well, I guess you could say
I wish that place was still
my
around,
family wasn't
actually.
poor, really. You know, I mean, they were
Yeah.
the upper working class, and then they were upwardly mobile. They got more and more wealthy as they went. I mean, they were young.
Yeah.
When I'm talking, they were in their 20s in the 70s.
Yeah.
Maybe 25, 26, something like that, 27.
Well,
So,
like I
you know,
said,
most people
my
are
parents were very young when they had me.
Yeah.
They were only just out of high school. They were only 18 in 1972. And then they also had 3 more kids like later on. So
Right.
they had a
Yeah.
bunch
I was
of
only child, so they had money.
Yeah, so you got like all the attention.
I got all the
lavished on
toys
you.
too, man. I
Well,
got
yeah,
all
that's what
kinds
I
of fucking
mean.
toys.
I had my parents to myself for 4 years, and then my brother was.
I had Evil Knievel toys. I had all the Star Wars toys. I had all the Shogun Warriors and shit. You know, I still got Shogun
I know, you
Warriors.
still
up there.
got 'em.
The big ones and the little ones. I love that shit.
You were a spoiled brat.
Well, no, I was just an only child. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
the way
always
it went.
wondered what that would be like. I was only like I said, I was only an only child until
It's
I
like
was
Pookie.
4.
It's like our cat.
Yeah.
We,
She's like our daughter for real. It's like the weirdest
Oh,
thing
man.
ever.
that cat's looking so fucking funny. Okay, well we put Pookie videos in
in the middle, yeah.
That cat's a trip. I'm getting fucked up too.
Yeah, I see
Already.
that.
You see it?
I see that.
You see that? Yeah. I think I'm gonna hold it together for the show.
Yeah, you better hold it together.
Tom, you need to stop drinking.
Yeah,
I drink
listen to
mostly for the
Dennis.
show.
Yeah, that's pretty much the way. Like every now and like sometimes we drink in the evenings, like
Yeah.
if we're just watching movies or something, and we
Yeah.
drink when we go out, obviously, but
Yeah.
we don't go out all that
Now,
much
our
anymore.
regular listeners like it when we go off track like this. When we go off track of the show, it's part of the show.
Well, I
They're
don't
at
mind.
work.
It makes it longer.
Most of you guys listening are at work, or they're commuting, or they're laying down in bed with headphones on trying to go to sleep. This is just, I do the same fucking thing. Okay.
Yeah.
So I understand the content, because I have people I listen to also.
Yeah.
Thinking about doing a special series of martial arts frauds and the history of martial arts, because with a main dude that I
the
liked,
Pinkman, that's the guy we were talking about.
Pinkman shut his account down.
Yeah.
So I might have to
And
pick
he
up
took all his videos down.
might have to pick up the gauntlet.
Well, you
I
can
may
do
have
that.
to do it.
Like I said, we still have to do like our food show too, because I'm super excited about that.
Man,
We
there's
should
so
do
much-
that. We should do that one of these days.
Yeah. So much
Somebody,
shit we
like
can
I
do.
said, somebody commented on like on our YouTube that we should do a show every day.
We can't do a show
I'm
every
like-
day. We got so much other stuff going on.
I know, like if I wasn't doing writing and wasn't doing graphic design, I might, because then I'd have more time. But
And most of you guys...
I mean, we do 3 shows a week. That's pretty. And like I said, I might actually end up doing that food show, but we're not going to do that every week. Though we might just do it like twice a month or something.
And some people have noticed, regulars have noticed that, I'm not always banging on all cylinders, because I get tired.
Well, it
And
depends.
I get sick sometimes, too. Really, what I need to do is, if we were to ever do some shit like that, we'd have to set like 3 days a week aside and do nothing but record.
Yeah,
back
and
to
just do
back
them
and
all
back
at
to
once
back.
so that we would have them ahead of
Right.
time.
That's really how you would
I
do it.
keep saying that we should do that for this show, but we just never end up doing
It never really ends up happening because we get sidetracked by stuff.
by other stuff, because like I said. Well, it's because we're both, I mean, he's retired. I'm like on the gig economy, so I have like 3 different fucking jobs. And so I never really know, like I wake up in the morning and I have like a set thing. It's like, okay, X, X, Y, Z, that has to get done today. But then I don't know like if other shit's going to come up. Because like I said, I have a lot of graphic design clients and they're just like, oh my God, I need this thing right now. And like, then I have to put everything else aside and do that. And like, you know what I mean? So I never know exactly like when I'm going to get
And
everything.
I have no sense of time.
Yeah, I
just
have to
don't.
like, seriously.
She's like my secretary.
I have
she says,
to
we
be.
have to record. We do?
Yeah.
I thought we just recorded. And she's like, well, that was 3 days ago.
Yeah.
Oh. I have no sense of time.
Yeah.
I had that all just beaten out of me over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could sit in one spot for like 3 months and not notice it.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah,
I think that's true.
I'm happy.
I
Content.
have to watch him though, because like yesterday I think you were because he made this like really good beef stew like in the crock pot.
Yeah.
And he was reheating some of it so we could have it for lunch.
Yeah.
And he went back in the room and
Forgot
was
all
like
about
watching YouTube and forgot all about it.
Yeah.
And like I'm like, you are gonna burn this fucking house down
Yeah.
one of these days.
I had that motorcycle accident that put me in a coma. I had that fucking frontal left interventricular brain hemorrhage, and time was never the same after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm always scared. Like I always
Time
have
was
like I
never the
feel like
same.
I don't want. Okay, I hate being a nag, and I
Yeah.
hate like having to like remind you of shit all the time because I
Yeah.
feel like I'm like annoying you and stuff.
You are.
But I know. That's what I mean, and I don't like being annoying.
But I lost that internal clock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like I always have to like seriously every time he cooks, because he mostly cooks because I don't really like to cook and he's a really good cook.
Yeah.
But every time like after he cooks I have to go back in and make sure he turned off the stove and then it's turned off the oven and all this other kind of stuff. Like I just have to check because I don't know.
Head injuries are a fucking curse and a blessing simultaneously. If you ever seen the series, you ever seen that Netflix series, The Punisher? He got shot through the head. And then he put his damn head X-ray on his fucking shirt. You know what I mean? Because he was getting all that superpowers from his fucking head injury. I got that.
Yeah.
She's seen me. I can get mad. I can get very strong. And I don't have any sense of time, which means that I have unlimited willpower.
Yeah.
It's just that I just don't know how much time has passed.
Well, I mean, in a way, it's weird, Len, like you said.
Other people are getting bored or they'll give up, and I haven't even noticed the passage of time.
Yeah.
So if I'm after your ass, and if it takes 4 or 5 years, I won't even notice.
He doesn't notice.
I won't even notice that it took 4. I like the fucking Terminator.
But see, this is like, and this is why, like, sometimes I find this, like, especially, like, recording the show and stuff like that, and, like, why sometimes I find it, like, very frustrating because it's like, I have to remind him, like, the night before, I'll be like, okay, we have to record a show tomorrow, like, at, at X time or whatever. Right. And then, like, I'll remind him again in the morning, like, when he gets up, we got to do a show today, so don't forget about it, like, kind of get jazzed up for it and everything like that. And then I'll be in here, like, I'll have the lights on, I'll have the mic set up, I'll have all the notes up, everything, and then I'm sitting here and I'm just like...
Yeah. It's some funny shit because I can...
And then I have to come in here and like, what, hello? And he's like, oh, I forgot all about that.
It's some funny shit because I'll remember something that somebody told me 20 years ago. I'll remember all this. I couldn't tell you what time it was.
No, he never knows.
Or what day it was. Or kind of the month. All that shit kind of... It
doesn't
doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We're just going along. We're riding a wave. It's just one thing after another.
Well, I have to keep track of shit because otherwise I have to keep track of shit because otherwise nothing would ever get done.
Right.
Nothing, like none of my work would ever get done.
No.
I would never get paid. I would starve to death. So I have to keep track of things whether I want to or not.
Yeah. She's my secretary.
I'm my own secretary. I'm everybody's secretary.
She's my secretary and her secretary.
I'm everybody's
But
secretary.
I do a lot of... I do all the support work. I
True.
make sure she's eating. I make sure things get fixed. I'm good at that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He does feed me, for real. He will, like, cook and then, like,
do
bring
all
me
the
some food
fucking
in my
house
office.
shit. I'll fucking fix cars. I'll fucking do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
I'll set things up. But so it's just kind of we're trading labor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, so where was I? Okay.
I don't know.
So we're... Why am I asking you? I don't know.
Why are you asking me?
That was, like, what this whole discussion was about. All right, so... As I said, Richard Speck was arrested in July 1963 for forging and cashing a cashier's $44 paycheck. $44. How much? Like I said, now I'm going to look that up. I'll put it right down here when I edit the video. Like how much $44 is. Because now I'm curious. That was probably like a shit ton of money. In 1963.
It was probably about $120.
Still not a great paycheck.
Yeah, no.
But I guess if you work at a grocery store, that's probably about the same as you'd get nowadays. Because, pay hasn't really gone up all that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he stole a bunch of cigarettes and beer and $3 in cash. Woohoo. So he's going to go, fucking party with that. So he was 21 years old at the time. He gets convicted of forgery and burglary and was sentenced to 3 years in prison. However, he was paroled after 16 months. Now, only a week after he was paroled, it's about 2:20 a.m. on January 9th, 1965, Richard Speck has a 17-inch carving knife, and he approaches a woman in the parking lot of her apartment building, jumps on her, holds a knife to her throat, threatens her and shit like that. Now she starts screaming her fucking head off, and he ran away. But, so police came, pretty much immediately, and they found him only a few blocks away and arrested him. Now, he got convicted of aggravated assault and was given...
Not attempted rape.
Yeah,
Weird.
which...
Okay.
I think that, he plea bargained down, because I think they actually were going to charge him with attempted murder, actually.
Okay, yeah.
But I think it got plea bargained down. So they just charged him with aggravated assault. He got a 16-month sentence, which... nice for jumping out and threatening a woman.
And in those days, you don't have to do about half of it if you had good behavior.
Well, yeah. And what ended up happening in this case? So he gets the 16-month sentence. This is supposed to run concurrently with the parole violation sentence because, like I said, he was still on parole at this point.
Right.
But there was a clerical error, and he got released on July 2nd, 1965. So we only ended up serving 6 months, and then he got back out again. Now, here's something that's kind of interesting. And Biography, on A&E or whatever that is, they have that show Biography. And I watched the Biography episode that they had about Richard Speck. And they interviewed this guy who had hung out with him who had hung out with Richard Speck when he was in his 20s. And he just said the weirdest thing. He said, they would him and his buddies and Richard Speck would go around to bars and go drinking or whatever. It was his drinking buddies. And he said that he was scared of Richard Speck because he was, always kind of bragging about all his violent conquests or whatever. And he says that he straight up bragged to them about attacking that woman in Dallas with the knife. And the guy that they were interviewing, I don't know what his name was, but he was just an old friend of Speck's, I guess. And he said the weirdest thing. He said, oh, well, that kind of talk, that was a little out there for our group of friends. I was like, oh, a little out there, you think?
Yeah. They might have been some wild asses, and then all
bragging about, almost stabbing a woman to death.
They might have been some wild asses bragging about the shit that they did, beating people's asses and fucking taking shit or whatever, and then he jumps in with that, and they're like, what?
Oh, well, that's a little too far,
But
man.
Maybe they thought he was lying.
Yeah, I don't know. They said one thing that he would do is they would go around to bars and he would take that big ass knife out and go, "This is my insurance policy."
Yeah, right.
He would say shit like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just thought that was...
Let me say something, though, to the audience. If you were to actually see this guy, he's a fucking pussy.
Well,
he's a fucking pussy.
Like I said.
Yeah,
he wasn't a little dude. He was 6'1", so he was kind of a big... He was a big dude, but...
His build and everything.
He was very thin.
Not a powerful guy, and... He
had all those acne scars. His face was all pockmarked.
He's trying to live on his height. He's trying to make his story off of his height. And, I've known some tall, lanky guys that could whip your ass. My fucking stepbrother was one of them. But he was a natural fighter, and he was, second-degree taekwondo that he didn't use. He actually just beat your ass through using instinct, really. There are some guys that are tall and lanky like that can't hurt you. But there's also a lot of them that are fakes.
Yeah.
They're tall and lanky and there's nothing to them.
Yeah. I mean...
if you have long bones and not much muscle on it, leverage is not in your favor. So their arms are not very strong, I've been fooled before. by guys that, man, I think this guy's going to be pretty fucking tough. And then I just went in there and just annihilated him.
Well, if they're tall and skinny, like
the eyes are up here.
Just push him over.
The eyes are up. The eyes are up here, so you assume that there's going to be physical power involved. But then once you start slinging the fucker around, there's no weight. There's no mass.
Well, yeah, not necessarily.
There's nothing there, like a scarecrow.
Yeah, and like you said, I think it's easier for like shorter people like myself to maintain balance. Because we're closer to the ground.
Well, if you put...
Plus, we don't hurt ourselves as much when we fall because we don't have as far to fall.
If you put 3 pounds of muscle on a little short bone, okay, versus 3 pounds of muscle on a very long bone, leverage is not in your damn advantage.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, if you look at some of these power lifters and some of these bodybuilders, you know, like... Lee Priest. Lee Priest is 5'4", you know, Mr. Olympia.
That's only an inch taller than me.
Yeah, and he fucking weighs 200 and something pounds, and that dude can curl like fucking, I forgot what it was, 300 something pounds, which is more than a taller guy.
Yeah.
But I don't really remember the numbers offhand. I'm kind of drunk too. But Lee Priest could basically rip through the side of a car.
Damn.
All right, and he's 5'4", like a gorilla.
Like I said, you gotta. I don't think height is a very good judge of.
No.
You know what I mean?
No, it's not. It's not.
You can't
really
be like, oh, that dude's short or that dude's tall.
Well, you take another guy who's 6'1", but he weighs 200 and something pounds, and he's fucking highly conditioned muscle. Then yeah, maybe he can be very fucking strong. It's just that height is not. Because you know, a tall guy is a bigger skeleton, so you can put more muscle on it. But we're always talking about, when you start talking about extremes like that, you're also having to throw in steroids, because the only way to get the maximum amount of muscle on those kind of frames is to use steroids. If you're not on steroids, then you don't have the maximum amount.
Yeah. That's
why steroids are being used. You know, there's a normal limit, and then there's a fucking abnormal limit. And most of these bodybuilders are dealing with the abnormal limit.
Well, like I said, why wouldn't they?
Because they're not human; they're superhuman.
Yeah, particularly if you're competing. I mean, you can't get if one person does it, everybody has to do it, because that guy would always win.
And Lee Priest will tell you that, oh yeah, he's on gear. You know, he's fucking roided out.
Well, like I said, I'm sure all the competitive ones are. Because you have to be, like I said.
Their T
one
counts,
of them does it; they all have to do it.
Their testosterone counts are 10 times that of a fucking mortal male.
Yeah.
You know. That's why
That's going to bite them in the ass later on down the line, though.
Oh, they can live a long life. They can live a very long life. They can live into their 70s. And it depends on what they're taking. It's just that, man, why would you want... They're doing it for... This Mr. Universe is basically a fucking beauty pageant. It's not a sport. It's like Mr. America or Mrs. Universe.
The thing about it, too, is like, you know, I'm all for, like, people having their own dreams and goals and, like, man, you do you, whatever. Yeah. But it's not like you could just walk up to a random person on the street and go, who's the reigning Mr. Universe? Nobody knows.
Yeah, or Mr.
Who's
Olympia.
Who's the reigning Miss America?
Well, it's a cult. They're doing it for each other. And I totally understand it. I
get that.
I totally understand. It's kind of like hot rodding.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Hot rodders might know other fucking famous
You're famous
hot
in your little
thing.
niche.
They're hot rodding their own bodies.
Yeah.
You know, and they have their own...
I get it, man.
Yeah, I get it. The thing is that, you know, I work out. You know, I lift for regular people. You know, I'm on deload week. But right now, I would never take gear, because my goals are not to be superhuman. I just want to be, you know what I mean, well built.
Yeah.
And to age well.
Yeah.
It's about health more than anything else.
Well, like I said, that's a good and that's a really reasonable.
Right.
But honestly, I would never tell anybody else. Like I said, I know people get like really judgmental about like other people's like body modifications. And I am like, as long as you're not,
I'm for it.
As long as you're not hurting anyone else.
Yeah.
It's your fucking body. Do
they
what
got
you want.
Freaky ass men and women. They got you know, like Lee Priest. He's freaky. He's 5'4". He doesn't look good in clothes. He looks good without clothes.
Yeah.
Because you can see all the muscles. With clothes, he looks like a fucking Oompa Loompa. Okay? Because he does. He's a cool dude. I like him. And the same thing, you know, fucking, there's a freaky old fucking German porn star, fucking Penelope Black Diamond, who's fucking skinny as hell with gigantic implants. You guys can look her up. She looks good without clothes. Put her in clothes, she'd look funny, probably.
I would imagine it would be very hard to
And some people get mad when they see that kind of shit, but, you know, the scene me and Jenny come from, we're like, yeah, okay. We're not.
Well, we're very into the goth scene. We're
Yeah.
which is fetish adjacent.
Yeah, we know porn stars
So
too.
we know people that do porn. We know people that do fetish porn.
Yeah.
So honestly,
We know what they're like.
Yeah, like I said, and most of them are perfectly
They're
nice
fun.
people.
Yeah, they're regular.
None of them are crazy.
No.
Nothing like that. They're perfectly normal. When you talk to them, most of
They
the
have
time,
a fucking very good sense of humor.
They do.
They don't take any of that shit seriously.
No.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I have a very like laissez-faire kind of.
Right.
As long as you're not hurting others.
Yeah.
If it's your body, if you wanted to, I mean, obviously there are limits to that. Like if you're killing yourself or whatever, and you don't know you're doing that.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't like those people that like, oh, I want to be a leopard, and they get tattoos all over and like split their tongue and stuff. So you know what I mean? It's like people get all judgmental about it. I'm like, man, whatever. That's what you want to do.
It's not wise though.
It's not what I would do. But
the guy that wanted to be a lion became a lion and then killed himself.
I mean, like I said, I do think they have underlying issues. That's why I said there's always like some limit to it. And I think like a lot of women too that have extensive plastic surgery, anybody that has extensive plastic surgery, obviously they have some body issues. And so I do think that should be dealt with. But that said, I do think up to a certain point, you should be allowed to do whatever the hell you want.
Some bodybuilders have body dysmorphia.
Oh, yeah,
it's
big
obvious.
time.
It's obvious. They call it manorexia.
Manorexia.
Mm-hmm. But some of them don't. A lot of them don't. But you can tell who does.
Well, it's very similar. Well, they have similar, like, because I have, I'm not going to say who it is, but I have a family member who was anorexic in her teenage years. So I know what it's like to go through that and to know somebody that is going through that. And I feel like the same justifications that they give for not eating is the same justifications that the men give. But it's just like a different outcome.
Yeah.
But it's the same. It seems like the same disorder.
It probably is. Because a lot of times it's very nitpicky.
Yeah, well, because like I said, they feel like they're never big enough, whereas anorexic, it's usually women, but, men are affected by it too. But anorexia, they always feel like they look fat. Yeah. Even if they weigh 60 pounds.
I look at the biggest of the fucking guys that are roided out and the biggest of the natural bodybuilders, and I don't see a huge difference. I look at the big natural guys and I go, yeah, that's good enough.
Yeah.
I can't look at that and go, no, that's not good enough. You know what I mean? I don't know what those guys that are geared up are.
What it is, and the stuff behind anorexia, it's a control issue. Yeah. It's usually, like I said, it's usually girls, but more men are affected by it nowadays. But it's usually girls that feel like they don't have a lot of control on other aspects of their lives. Yeah. So they feel like what they eat and what they look like is the only thing they can't control. So they will control that to a pathological degree.
We know ones that are like that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We can name them by name, but we're not going to.
I'm not going to. But like I said, I grew up like someone in my family has had that and had to be hospitalized for it because she would have died. But and I remember going through that because I was only a couple years younger. Yeah. And but it's the same justification. They feel like they're never good enough, that they don't have any control over anything, and that's the only thing they control. Yeah. They can control is what they put in their body and what their body looks like. And it's also body dysmorphia in the sense that they have a warped sense of what they look like. They look in the mirror and they see fat even when there is none. Right.
They're fucking weigh 70 pounds and they think they're fucking fat.
Well, that's what I mean. And like I said, she got down to, I think, 58 pounds, and she's quite tall. So she basically looked like a skeleton, but she still thought she looked fat. Yeah. So it's not good, obviously. They have a very delusional, sense of what they look like.
Yeah, Dennis is getting pissed. Get back to the fucking
Dennis is getting pissed.
Yeah, I could tell by his back. I could tell by the back of his head. He's getting pissed.
The back of his little bobblehead.
Yeah, I can tell by, look, he's got his little forehead and shit.
You're the one that goes off on the tangent.
Yeah. Well,
I don't mind going off on tangents, though, because like I said, people seem to like the longer shows. And it's like, even if we don't have, because we're only doing one topic today, so it's not like we have a ton of shit to talk about. True. So it's like, if you want to go off on time.
True. What time is it?
If you want to complain about it, then I'll just delete it.
What time is it?
Actually, we're at 54 minutes. Maybe Do you want to take a break so you can get a new drink?
Take a break.
All right. So we're going to take a break right now. When we come back, we will talk more about Richard Speck, about all his other crimes, and about the crimes that ended up making him famous. All that.
He'll never be as famous as me. Never.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dennis is feeling a little left out. All right. So we'll be back in just a few minutes. You love true crime. I love true crime. And I've spent the last 3 years compiling a series of the most intriguing unsolved murders of the 20th century. It's called The Faceless Villain, and Volume 3 is available now. Featuring such fascinating cases as the Ketty murders, the Carrie Babies case, the Frog Boys, the Alcasar murders, and the Inokashira Park dismemberment incident, The Faceless Villain Volume 3 is an involving exploration of unsolved slayings spanning the years from 1980 to 1999. Pick up your copy in print or ebook formats on Amazon, or download the audiobook version from audible.com, and get ready for a chilling journey through modern crime history.
Look, we're going to visit baby Cookie in her little house. Hello, baby Cookie. How are you doing? How are you doing? Do you have anything to say to the people? Am I bothering you? Yeah, am I kind of bothering you? Okay, I'm sorry. You go back to sleep, okay? That's her top floor apartment. One of her favorite places to sleep. Hi, Beijing. What are you doing? Okay. What happened? What happened, Beijing? Pretty princess. Princess Fluff-ass. That's what I call her, because she's so fluffy. Yeah. She clearly does not want me filming her. What do you think about that, Cookie? Beijing just ran right away. I know. I don't know what to say about it. Neither do you, clearly.
Conspiranormal Podcast proudly presents the Strange Realities Conference. Strange Realities. Come join us for one day of presentations on the paranormal with live music at night featuring Tim Banal,
The Rise and Fall of the Flat Earth Theory,
Joshua Cutchin,
Alien Hybrid Lore,
Joe Damari,
Pushing the Limits of Reality,
Guy Malone,
Roswell 1947, What Really Happened,
Timothy Renner,
Pennsylvania Wild Man,
and added to the lineup, Mark Anthony Wyatt,
Cornish Legends and UFO Sightings,
Zach Hunt.
presentation of his book Unraptured,
Followed by a live recording of the Conspiranormal Podcast. More speakers and music acts to be announced. October 19, 2019, SIR Nashville.
Tickets and info at www.strangerealitiesconference.com. $40 at the door, $30 pre-sale.
All right, we are back for the second half of the show. Here's Dennis. He's still with us.
Yeah.
I'm going to poke his
Dennis
little
is
head.
with us.
I'm gonna
This is
make
the
his
second
little
time
head.
we started because the first time Pookie walked across the computer.
Seriously, we were like a minute and a half in,
Yeah, we were
and
like-
then Baby Cookie just walked right across.
Yeah,
just
we don't know what she
stepped on all
pressed.
the buttons, so I don't know if she like pushed some shit that like fucking
Right, so we
shit
just
up.
started
So I
over.
said, well, I'm just gonna start over.
Right.
She's such a troublemaker. She's just mad that we're not paying attention. All right, so when we last left Richard Speck, he had just been released from prison following his aggravated assault charge against the woman that he jumped on in the parking lot, pulled a knife on her, and whatnot. Now, he actually managed to get a job, because I guess back in the old days, they didn't check your fucking police records or anything like that. So he gets a job as a truck driver for the Patterson Meat Company. Stop it,
Down there,
Pookie.
tearing shit up.
What are you doing?
Get out of there. That's right. Okay.
She'll do that for 5 seconds. and
Yeah.
then she'll be like, are they not looking anymore? Okay,
Yeah.
now I'm going to go back to it. Now, in the 3 months that Richard Speck worked at the Patterson Meat Company, he had 6 accidents with his truck. And then finally they were like, because he was
Yeah.
drunk, you know what I mean?
Right.
Not only a drunk, but not only would he drink, but he would also like drink a whole bunch and then take like a whole bunch of pills on top of it too.
Yes,
so
he's fucked up.
I don't understand how people like that even function. They must like get used to it after. Like, seriously, I have like 3-4 drinks and I don't remember shit. But you know what I mean? So it's like these people that are like, oh yeah, I drink like a fucking whole fifth and then like took a big handful of whatever. And it's like, how the fuck are you still walking around, man?
Guess it depends on how young you are.
I guess.
Remember back in the Army, every now and then we'd go on a fucking bender and drink a fifth like that, and then wake up the next morning at 4:30 in the morning and go run 5 miles. And by the time the run was over, we were sober. Yeah, but we were young. We were real young.
I could probably do that, but there would be a lot of barfing involved, and also, like I said, I wouldn't remember anything from the night before, because after a certain amount of drinks, like my memory just blacks out. So he's had like 6 accidents in the truck, and finally, like the Patterson Meat Company's like, yeah, like we don't think you should be working here anymore, and they fired him. Now, in December of 1965, at this point, Speck had separated from his wife because she had had enough of his crap, obviously. Right. Now, his mom recommended, it's like, well, why don't you, like, move in with this woman she was the bartender at this tavern that he always hung out at I think it was called Ginny's Lounge. And she was an ex-professional wrestler, actually. She was 29 years old at the time, and she needed somebody to, like, live in and, like, babysit her kids while she was working, because she always worked at night and stuff like that.
Recipe with fucking Speck.
Yeah.
How'd this go?
Well, honestly, it probably didn't go all that bad, because I don't think it lasted all that long.
Okay.
So his mom was like, why don't you just move in with her and, like, you know, you can watch her kids and, like, make a little bit of money and shit like that. Now, not too long after this arrangement was made, I think it was only like 3 weeks or a month or something like that, Richard Speck's wife formally filed for divorce. And this obviously pissed him off a great deal. This same month, which was January of 1966, as I said, Richard Speck got into a knife fight at the same bar where the bartender worked at, Ginny's Lounge, and he actually stabbed a dude and got charged again with aggravated assault, but his mom intervened and hired a defense attorney, and this defense attorney was able to get the charge reduced to disturbing the peace. So now this is a hallmark of a lot of Richard Speck's, like, criminal career. He pretty much had every chance. His mom, for whatever reason, seemed to love him unconditionally. Every time he got into trouble, she would help him out. She would bail him out. And all his siblings would do that too. Like, they just helped him out. Obviously, they gave him money, they found him jobs and shit like that. And it just never, I don't know. And it's just like never, it was never enough for him, I guess. It's like he just never.
She felt guilty for what he went through when he was a kid.
Maybe.
So.
Although, like I said, a lot of people have shitty step parents. A lot of people have to move when they're kids. Not all of them end up doing what he did. So.
It was just these particular individuals.
I guess so. Like I said, that's why I think there's definitely
we're not all the same. We're all different.
There's definitely a genetic component. You obviously have to have a, you know, kind of like a pre-existing you know, propensity for that type of behavior, because a lot of people go through some shit when they're kids and they turn out perfectly fine.
Today's fucking common culture, you know, and the media promotes the ideas that we're all the same. We're all the same.
Do they?
Yeah. That's what's coming. We're all the same. But we're not all the same. People are different. We're all individuals. And, you know, people do fucking weird shit based upon their individuality. You know, it's just the way it is.
Well, like I said, I never got the feeling that anyone was saying we were all the same. Obviously, everyone's different, and that's and honestly, that's why I think that it's important to, like, kind of look into this kind of shit, because I think that serial killers in particular, mass murderers in particular, they kind of have this thing. It's like, oh, they're looking for one thing to, like, pin on it to make sense of why this person behaved as they behaved. But I think there's a lot of other shit going on too, because like I said, I mean, Richard Speck, up until he was 6 years old, seemed to have a pretty idyllic life. Like I said, he wasn't the brightest kid. He wasn't, like, you know, they didn't have a lot of money or anything like that, but he had a normal childhood. And then, yeah, he had a shitty stepdad. Yeah, he, you know, didn't do so good in school. Yeah, he had to move to another place. But a lot of people have gone through a lot worse shit than that and didn't become mass murderers or serial killers. So obviously he had, you know, a propensity for that anyway, like, genetically. It has to be that. It has to be like a combination of those two things.
Hey, stop tearing up paper. She pulled paper out of the damn bookcase. I gotta stop it. Hey, stop it. No. Go.
Man, she is getting all kind of trouble today.
Yeah.
So, as I said, his mom was able to get the charge reduced to disturbing the peace. So, Richard Speck only paid a $10 fine, which, like I said, I have to look up how much that is in today's money. It's probably a lot more than it sounds like. He got put in jail for 3 days because he didn't pay the fine. Now, this was actually the last time that Richard Speck was in police custody in Dallas. Now, in March of 1966, Richard Speck buys this old beat-up car. It was actually a 12-year-old car. Now, this was what I was thinking of before, where he actually burglarized a grocery store. He stole 70 cartons of cigarettes and then started selling them out of the trunk of his car in the grocery store parking lot.
Okay, well, he had 70 cartons.
Yeah.
So if he sold them for $2 or $3 a piece.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, back in those days, right.
Now, I'm not really sure how many packets of cigarettes he sold out of the trunk of his car in the parking lot.
Probably sold them by the carton.
Maybe he did.
Yeah.
But I'm imagining he sold them all because then he abandoned the car in the parking lot. However, since he was the dumbass that bought the car could be traced back to him.
Right.
Which maybe he didn't think of. I don't know. So the police actually were able to trace him because the car was in his name. They issued a warrant for his arrest for burglary. Now, he was actually arrested in Dallas. This would be his 42nd arrest.
Damn.
And he, if convicted, he would obviously go to prison again for a very long time. So his sister Carolyn, like I said, his mom and his siblings were all very adamant about helping him out whenever he needed help, even though he was clearly a dirtbag. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a dirtbag.
Yeah. I mean, some of it was like minor shit.
Right.
But
that doesn't happen to a normal person.
Right. It's like, I can see maybe 1 or 2 times, like, you know, I was like drunk and disorderly or something like that. Like, people make mistakes.
The average person goes through their whole life without being arrested.
Right. I have never been arrested, but you know what I mean? I've got tickets and shit, obviously, but I've never been arrested.
No, arrest and conviction, the average person never has it happen to them.
Right. So, yeah, 42, a little excessive, I'm just saying.
You were asking for trouble. That's the only way.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. And like I said, I feel like he fancied himself something of, oh, I'm a criminal badass.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because he got that whole tattoo that said "Born to Raise Hell" like on his fucking arm and all.
Back
that.
when getting tattoos was a sign of a badass.
Well, yeah, because
now you got cute girls getting.
Because now everybody's got them.
Yeah, little Hello Kitty tattoos and shit.
Everybody's got a fucking tattoo nowadays.
Stereotypical crap now.
Yeah. So because he would probably get a really bad prison term because he had been arrested so many times, his sister Carolyn, you know, like I said, and his family was always like willing to help him out, even though he was always getting into trouble and it must have been a pain in the ass for them to constantly have to bail his stupid ass out. His sister Carolyn drives him to the Dallas bus depot and is like, get the fuck out of here. So he goes to Chicago. Now, in Chicago, he actually stayed with his older sister, Martha, who lived there with her husband and her kids and whatever. Now, from there, he stayed with her for a while, and then he moves back to his hometown of Monmouth, Illinois, and he stayed with some family friends. Now, he had a brother named Howard who was a carpenter in Monmouth. And as I said, his brother was, like, very willing. He's like, hey, I'll get you a job. So he fucking got him a job, like sanding plasterboard for a different carpenter. So, like I said, this dude had every opportunity. People were like giving him jobs left and right. But right about this time, he seemed like he was doing okay for a little bit. But then right about this time, he found out that his ex-wife, who, as I said, you know, he was like going to prostitutes and being like, hey, I got a prostitute, even though you're pregnant. Ha ha ha. You know what I mean? He was doing that kind of shit. And thought that he was cheating on her, you know, that she was cheating on him the whole time. He found out that she had remarried. And she had actually remarried only 2 days after the divorce from him was finalized.
She had something lined up.
Well, the divorce takes a long time to finalize. Fair enough. I mean, you know what I mean.
Right, yeah.
I know, I've been through that shit. But yeah, so it takes a long time. So she was just waiting for the divorce to be final so she could marry her new guy. And that seemed to really, really piss him off. Because even though...
Because he didn't have anything waiting on him.
I guess. Yeah. And like I said, even though he felt like, well, I can just like cheat on you as much as I want, But it's like, even though she had left him, even though she was separate, even though she had divorced him, and he had presumably signed the divorce papers, I'm not sure how it worked back then, but somehow her marrying someone else, that was just a step too far. That was a betrayal of him. Like, she was never allowed to, like...
He's a control freak.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah.
So that apparently made him very, very upset. So in March of 1966, he moves to the Christie Hotel in downtown Monmouth and spent pretty much several days just going from bar to bar and just like getting completely shit-faced. Now, around this time, there was another incident where he was in a bar in Gulfport, Illinois, and he got detained overnight because he had threatened another guy like in the bar bathroom with a knife. So he gets arrested again for that. Now on April 3rd of 1966, he broke into the house of a 65-year-old woman named Mrs. Virgil Harris. Now she had been out, but she came home at about 1 o'clock in the morning and found him in her house, and he was brandished a knife at her and basically tied her up, raped her, and ransacked her house. She had been out babysitting, actually, and he stole the $2.50 that she had earned babysitting. So he raped a 65-year-old woman.
Yeah.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
So she gave a description to the police. She said he's about a 6-foot-tall white man. She said he was very polite, and he had a very soft voice with a southern drawl. Now, this was like kind of significant because, I mean, this was Illinois. Not a lot of people have southern drawls in Illinois, but he had lived in Texas for so long that I guess he had developed that voice, or it was a put on or something like that. So it stood out, you know what I mean?
That's what
in
I was gonna
rural
say.
Illinois.
To me, he sounded like fucking Johnny Cash. You know.
Yeah.
So when you were talking about Illinois, I was like, yeah, but he sounded like a southerner.
Yeah, I mean, he lived
weird.
in Texas for a little while. Or, you know, for a significant chunk of his youth, I guess, he lived in Texas. And what you doing?
It's just dropping water on me,
I thought
man.
you were, like, presenting it like,
No,
look
it's
at this.
dropping water on me.
It
Look
was
like I'm
very
fucking
distracting.
pissing on myself or something. Little drops hitting and shit.
Well, that's okay. Everyone can
It's all
see
the
it.
damn ice.
Well, we need a lot of ice. This is Florida. Although it is
Yeah.
starting to cool off slightly.
Yeah,
Not
just
much, though.
starting to end.
It's going down to like 85 instead
Yes.
of 105.
And it's not as humid as it was. The oppression is not. In here is nice and cool. I mean, it actually reached 71 degrees inside my air-conditioned garage.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because the air conditioner went off. Got
Yeah,
that window unit in
What
there.
do
It
we
went
keep
off.
the air conditioning at like, what, 74?
71.
71.
71, but it can't maintain it all the time. On a
Yeah,
really hot day.
seriously, we have gone through, how long have we lived in this house? 8 or 9 years? I
Yeah.
think we've gone through 2 different air conditioning
Yeah.
units. They can't handle it.
Even with central air,
They can't handle it.
you can put the thermostat on 71, and on a really hot day,
It
it's
won't.
about like 75.
It won't make it.
It can't maintain.
Even in
it.
Florida, they're just not built for that. They're not
No.
built to work that hard. It's sad, but that's how hot it is down here, y'all. Yeah, so as I said, he's raped and robbed a 65-year-old woman. So clearly this guy has no shame. Now, a week after that incident,
You say 65 or 75?
65.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah. He broke into her house while she was out babysitting.
Yeah,
and
but when
was,
you
like,
look at the
staying
guy,
there.
when you look at the guy, you understand. You know, this guy is not a catch. You know what I mean?
Well, clearly.
He's not. You know, this guy's hurting. If you ask me.
I guess. It's like,
He's
the
hurt.
thing is, he had real bad skin. Like,
Yeah.
it looked like he had really bad acne as a kid.
Right.
And, like,
His
left a lot
standards
of
were very
scars.
low.
I guess so.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know, like, if when he was young, he wasn't terrible looking. If he had, like, a good personality, then he probably could have overcome that.
Well, that's kind of like a universal thing.
But because
Yeah.
he was a scumbag and he looked like that,
As long
then
as
I'm
you're
sure
healthy,
that didn't help.
as long as you're a healthy guy, you're not too far out of shape. You know what I mean? And if you can talk, you can get a girl.
That's what I mean.
If you know
It's
how to
like,
talk.
it doesn't, like, and we've
Doesn't
mentioned this
require
on
a
the
whole
show
lot.
before.
Right. Yeah.
Women in general, despite the stereotype, women in general are not as shallow and will, if a
I
guy...
don't like that term. I don't
No,
like
I'm just saying, well, you know, that's a term that everyone understands.
Men are optically stimulated.
Yeah.
Women aren't as much.
Not as much.
They're not as much. So women say, well, it's shallow, to be optically stimulated. Men have a very primitive sexual apparatus.
Yeah.
They want to hump on things that look good. That's how fucking simple it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's something that we've inherited through other more primitive creatures. Because our fucking slutty asses are only designed to fucking spread seed. If it looks good, it must be good. And try to get as much of that out there as you can. That's the strategy that fucking rose to the top when it came to male animals of all species.
Well, and since
women have different standards. They have to block out the shit bags and choose the ones that can actually
we have
invest.
more practical concerns.
Right, because
we have a lot more to lose.
It's more expensive to raise child, even in the wild. So you have to choose the male that will invest in you.
Yeah.
If he doesn't invest in you, then you fucking bypass that one.
Yeah.
So it's not about shallowness, because you're passing a moral judgment on animal behavior. And no matter what people want to fucking say, humans are animals. They're just they're just one of the animals in the animal kingdom. We're a primate.
Yeah.
We are sentient. But as I've gotten older, I believe that there are many animals that are sentient.
I kind of
I've
suspect
seen it in a lot of the other animals.
I think animals several animals are a lot smarter than they are given credit for.
Most animals, mammals, seem to be at least operating at a child level. And,
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I think most of them do. So it's just the way life is. You know what I mean? Life is not about what's right or wrong. It's just about what works. And that's what works in these animals.
Yeah. But like I said, so if this dude's looks, like I said, he wasn't like a mutant or anything like that. Yeah, he had bad skin, but a lot of people do. It's like so if he had been like a cool dude, like if he was funny or sweet or, had some other thing to offer.
Smart, made money.
Then I don't think that he would have had any trouble. Yeah. But because he was also a creep,
To keep it real for you men out there, if you're young and cute, you can get some tail. All right? If you're not young and cute, and you're old, you better be rich. That's the two survival strategies.
Well, not just rich. You need to have something else to offer. It doesn't necessarily have to be money.
It's not just rich. It's just, the guys that are rich usually have certain traits.
Right.
That kind of promote.
That's what I mean. And like I said,
that kind of promote women, the attraction from women. Because guys that have a lot of money and they're older have success and status. Women love status. But for an older guy to have status, he is a certain way. That's how that status accrued to him.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. That's why I feel like it's bad to say that, women only want people that have money or people that... It's
more like status.
No, it's not just that either. It's that you don't want another person that you have to take care of that doesn't... You don't just want some bum that's going to lay around on your couch and not make any money and not help you around the house.
That's still the same.
And that's what I mean. You just don't want that. You don't want somebody that's going to drag you down.
A high status man is successful.
Right.
And a high status
He's successful in his own right. He's not depending on you.
And a high status man is successful for certain reasons.
Yeah.
And it's usually he has a certain personality for it. He has certain skills for it. So that makes it conducive to a relationship.
Yeah.
Because,
like I said, you just don't want some...
If you can't have relationships, you never become successful.
Yeah.
Because the women that are dating this successful guy, he also has certain attributes that make him successful with men. That's how he got successful.
Yeah.
It's just you know what I mean? It's just study fucking wealthy and powerful men. Yeah. That's all you have to do is study them.
Unless they inherited their money, in which case, fuck that.
Yeah, fuck that. That's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. Okay. There are just guys that... Okay,
any idiot
here's a real common one. Here's a real common one that you people can relate to. Sylvester Stallone. He's a successful guy. Men like him, women like him. He has a lot of money. He has a very young wife right now. Okay? If you look at the way he is, it makes sense. He's very artistic. He's intelligent.
Well, yeah, he's a writer. He's like
a writer. He keeps good. He takes care of himself. You know, he's just guys like that are gonna be successful. That's just the way that it is.
Well, like I said, and this kind of applies for anybody, men or women. You just have something. You have to have something to offer the other person.
Right.
If you don't have anything to offer the other person, then no one's gonna want to hang with you.
And really, you don't have anything to offer other people until you're cool. So that's really kind of the reason why Sly is successful, because he was cool. That's really the fucking. He was cool and he was intelligent, and that's the crux of the matter. As he got older, he knew how to play that game. Yeah. And you say that was a good way to describe it? Yeah. And
like I said, there's a lot of ways that a guy could be quote-unquote successful. So, like I said, that's why I don't like...
Steve Buscemi is fucking successful against women.
And seriously, I love Steve Buscemi.
And that's not...
There's something really sexy about Steve Buscemi.
That's not a classically good-looking guy.
No, he's not.
He's very attractive. Women like him. He's very attractive.
Because his personality is very appealing.
He's a cool
guy. That's what I'm saying. It's like, if you look at, actors or other successful people that I admire...
Right.
It's not because of what they look like.
Yeah.
It's because of what they've done.
And I'm not saying Steve Buscemi looks bad. He's a skinny guy. He's a thin guy, and he knows how to play.
He's not ugly.
He's not ugly. He's just a weird, odd-looking guy.
He's odd-looking.
But the thing is that's Buscemi.
Yeah.
And
he owns it.
Right. Yeah.
That's what I think matters. And he owns it.
He's a magnetic person. So
yeah, and he has a cool personality, and the way he comes across in his movies, he always comes across really cool.
It all boils down to fucking character.
Yeah.
Really. That's really what it all boils down to.
And I think it's more important. I think it's more important, for dudes, because honestly, I don't think...
With character, everything else just fucking
Everything else is secondary.
Right.
Like I said, you can look like anything. You can weigh 500 pounds. You can fucking anything. You can look like Steve Buscemi. You can look...
Right. There were fat guys that fucking ran the game.
if you're a cool guy, if you're funny, if you're sweet, if you have a really good personality, then no one will care what you look like, seriously. And if you own it, don't be fucking... don't be all insecure about it. Don't be just this is
fat ass Chris Farley had good looking women. Just remember him
because he was funny.
He was funny.
Of course, he died really young, so that wasn't good.
Drug abuse, though. That was on him.
Drugs, you guys don't do that. Yeah. So anyway, returning to Richard Speck.
Yeah.
About a week after he raped and robbed a fucking 65-year-old woman, like an asshole,
like a winner. Yeah.
Yeah. Now. At that time, there was a 32-year-old barmaid, and she worked at a place called Frank's Place, a bar in downtown Monmouth. Now, she was last seen leaving this tavern where she worked at 12:45 a.m. on April 9th and was reported missing April 13th. Her body was found later that day in a hog house behind the tavern. She had actually died from a blow to the abdomen that had ruptured her liver. Now, interestingly, Richard Speck was a regular customer of Frank's Place, and the hog house where her body was found was one of many that he had helped build in one of the places that he had worked. So Richard Speck got questioned about this murder. Because he turned up to collect his last paycheck from this place.
Sounds suspicious.
That's what I mean.
Okay.
Now, so the police questioned him at first about this murder, and then they said, well, you need to stay in town. You can't leave town, because you're still a suspect. So police came back a couple days later to question him further, to the Christie Hotel where he had been staying, and they discovered that he had left the hotel on the pretense that he was just going to do some laundry, and that he had fucking taken off. So many people suspect that this was actually his first murder. Even though...
That's weird.
He was very famous for his later ones, but this was one that was unsolved that seems like his MO. Because...
If you're trying to kill somebody, though, why do you hit him in the abdomen?
Because I should say that the murders later, the student nurse murders that made him famous, one of the victims had also been kicked in the stomach.
Oh, okay.
In a similar fashion.
I didn't realize you could kill somebody by kicking them in the stomach.
Well, it depends on how hard you kick them.
Yeah, and imagine how slightly built they are.
I mean, there's a lot of, vital
It must take a long time to die from that, though.
Yeah, that's what's horrifying about this.
But wouldn't they go look for help?
Who knows? I don't know.
That just sounds off. That just sounds off. He never admitted to that one, though, right?
Not that I know of. He didn't talk a lot, though. I mean, he did talk to, and I'll get into this a little bit later, but he did talk to those two guys that were, like, in the nascent FBI behavioral sciences unit. But they thought that he didn't have much insight about
Sounds kind of like maybe he jumped up and down on her. Was there any other damage to her?
I'm not really sure, but they said that's what the cause of death was. Her liver was ruptured.
I'd have to see the autopsy report.
Yeah.
That sounds like an accident. Maybe he didn't have anything to do with that.
I don't know.
Or maybe he did.
He was right there.
Maybe he did kill her, but he killed her by accident too.
Yeah.
And then didn't admit to it.
I don't know. I kind of doubt that. I think he kind of
kicking somebody in the stomach though. Did
it on purpose. Like I said, if you kicked them enough times.
Yeah, maybe.
If you had what if he had like a steel-toed boot on, and you just kept? What if she was unconscious and you just kept kicking her?
The whole steel-toed boot thing, I don't think makes a big difference. I've owned steel-toed boots. It doesn't really matter if there's a steel toe in it or not. It's still the same mass hitting you.
I'm just saying, what if she was unconscious and he just kept kicking her?
Maybe.
But yeah.
But you would think that if you were trying to kill somebody, you would strangle them or beat them in the head.
Who knows? I'm just saying that she died.
It is suspicious.
And they found her body later on, suspiciously, in a place that he had worked on, not that far from where he was staying at the time. He also skipped town, like right after they questioned him. So that seems a little fishy.
Yeah.
Also, they searched his hotel room after they found out that he was gone. And they found a bunch of shit from Mrs. Virgil Harris's apartment, who's the 65-year-old woman that he had raped and robbed her place. So they found a bunch of her shit in his hotel room also.
If he did
a
kill
bunch
her,
of other shit from other burglaries that they think that he had pulled off at that time.
If he did kill her, I think he maybe killed her by accident. He was trying to get something off of her, get some sex off her. She said no. A fight broke out. He kicked her in the stomach. She didn't react well to that. Started stumbling around, and she did die. And he's like, "Fuck it, I'm out of here."
Yeah, that doesn't make it any
because
better.
If you're trying to kill somebody, usually you're going to do something like beat him in the head until they're dead instantly.
Yeah.
Or stab them, something like that. It just sounds kind of. That sounds like a strange case there.
It does, but I definitely think he was responsible for that shit. Whether it was on purpose or accidental, I don't think it really matters at this point.
There's a good chance he was responsible, yeah.
Yeah, because the shit he did later on,
right?
I'm really not willing to give him the benefit of the doubt.
That might have been an introductory thing.
Yeah, and then he got it.
He was just like, yeah, okay, it's easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's easy to kill people. Let's do it. Let's continue to do it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like that.
So after he skipped out after that crime, in April of 1966, April 19th of 1966, he goes back to stay with his sister, Martha. Like I said, his family were always willing to help him out and take him back in and shit like that. Now, this was in the northwest side of Chicago. She lived there with her husband, Gene, and they had 2 teenage daughters. Martha had previously been a pediatric nurse, and Gene was a railroad switchman who worked at night. Now, when Richard Speck turned up on their doorstep, saying that he needed a place to stay and he needed help and stuff like that, his whole story about why he'd had to leave Monmouth was that, there was a crime syndicate there and they were trying to make me sell drugs and I didn't want to, so I had to leave.
Likely story.
And his sister and brother were like,
yeah,
no, yeah. I don't think that's the truth at all. But they figured since he was already fucking there and they had to do something with him, Gene, the husband, had actually been in the Navy. And he thought, well, maybe we can get him a job with the Merchant Marine. Maybe he'll be out on a ship and he'll be out of our face. And that would be really good. So he takes Richard Speck to the U.S. Coast Guard office to get the letter that you have to get to work as an apprentice seaman to get put on various ships. Now at this stage, the application, he had to get fingerprinted, he had to get photographed, he had to have a physical examination, he had all that. So all that was completed, and he got a letter of authority. Now he actually got a berth on a ship called the Clarence B. Randall. It was a lake freighter, and there was 33 crew members on it. So he got put on this ship, and he was doing okay for a little while. But then, one day when he was on there, he apparently like doubled over in pain, and they had to take him to a hospital, and he had acute appendicitis. So they had to like emergency like remove his appendix, or he would have died, which many of the doctors there said. Now, while he was in the hospital, they took him to a hospital in Hancock, Michigan, and he had to stay there for 2 weeks, like recovering from the surgery. Now, while he was there, he had like all these kind of nurses like waiting on him and stuff like that. And some people have speculated that it was this time period that kind of made him fixate on nurses, because they were all like very nice to him and they were all taking care of him and paying attention and stuff like that. So that might have like, you know, contributed to the shit that happened later on. So he gets discharged from the hospital after 2 weeks. He didn't have a lot of money, so he goes back to stay with his sister, Martha, and her family. Now, he apparently, he had met a woman who was a nurse at the hospital in Michigan at the time, and her name was Judy Lacanimi. She was 28 years old. Now, the weird thing about this is that him and her dated for like 2 weeks. And she had nothing but good things to say about him. She said he was a complete and total gentleman. It's like he took her out like to expensive dinners. He took her out dancing. He took her out, like, he was like a super nice guy. And like she couldn't understand like what had happened later on.
Trying to start a new leaf, man.
I guess so. And they
life.
said that was like the only time, but she never had any complaints about him or nothing. I mean, they didn't like know each other that long, obviously, but it's like, that seems really fucking strange. But yeah, so that was that whole thing. So, March 20th, he gets back on the crew of the Clarence B. Randall, you know, where he had to leave before because of the appendicitis. Now, a little while after he gets back on the ship, he started getting into a lot of trouble again. He was, like, drinking, taking pills, shit like that. He got into, like, fucking fights with the officers on the boat. He fell off the boat a couple of times, like, in a drunken stupor. So eventually they fired him and they kicked him off the boat. So he ends up staying at this fucking flop house in Chicago. And,
so he's a loser. I mean, this fucker's
pretty much. And like I said, he's been given every opportunity. Like his family is helping him. They're finding him jobs.
And he keeps
They're
fucking up.
giving him money and he just keeps screwing it up.
Yeah.
He just keeps screwing it up.
So I would think that there's a certain part of him that realizes, man, I'm a fucking loser.
Yeah, so
This
I might as
isn't
well
going
just
anywhere.
lean into the loserness. Lean into it, man.
Yeah, I think that's happening.
I guess so.
He's
like
losing
I said,
hope.
Yeah, I do think that's an issue. I mean, this is not a guy... I don't know. It just seems like he didn't really have... He could have had, like, a completely normal, if unremarkable, life. Like I said, he wasn't a fucking genius.
Sounds like he had a bunch of self-hate, too.
He might have.
Yeah,
I mean...
self-loathing is what they call.
Although, I do feel like he doesn't seem like, and I've only seen a couple of interviews with him, but he doesn't seem like a very introspective person. I mean, this is very unlike Ed Kemper, who seemed to have at least a semblance of insight into his behavior, like the psychological, ramifications of his
Kemper
behavior.
was a woe's me motherfucker, though.
True, but he was intelligent, and he did seem to have some insight, even if it was faked. Like, he did seem to have some insight into that.
I think
this
he had
guy
some
just
insight.
seems...
I think he had some insight, but then he also tried to use that woe is me to fucking use that to get what he wanted.
But like I said, that was a hallmark of his intelligence, though, because he was very deliberately trying to manipulate others by manipulating their emotions.
He knew other people had empathy. So,
right.
Yeah.
I just generally I feel like Richard Speck is just kind of like he's just like a dumb animal.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if he could have turned out differently if his circumstances had been different.
I don't think he had the intelligence.
I'm not sure that he would have, because I do feel like, yeah, he had like some shit happen when he was a kid, but the shit that happened to him when he was a kid was not that bad, like compared to other people who turned out okay. So I feel like
just shallow and stupid.
Yeah, in this case, I feel like there was nothing that could have been done, because even when he was very young, like a young teenager, he had already started committing petty crimes.
It sounded like everything was done, actually, if you ask me. Sounds
That's
like
what I mean. And and like I said, it's not like people were just like rejected him. It's not like his family were like, fuck off, we don't want anything to do with you. Right. It's like he would turn up on their doorstep, they would give him money, they would try to find him, they would try to help him. They tried to help him. Just up until the end.
Typical psychopath.
Yeah. You know. I feel like he just didn't feel anything for other people at all. Psychopath. So I don't know if there's anything that could have been done to help him because, like I said, a lot of things were done to help him, and obviously that didn't really do anything.
Man, if you gave that guy everything in the world, he'd still fuck it up.
Yeah, that's one thing I feel. And like I said, I can't say that about every single one. And like I said, I'm not saying that I sympathize with these dudes or anything because obviously they had choices and they didn't have to do what they did. But this guy, I don't think that there's anything that could have been done. No. I just don't. But so after what?
He needed his ass beat.
Yeah.
He needed his ass beat.
Many times.
Yeah, there's never any inclination in any of this information that he ever had his ass beaten. But I'm going to say that had his ass been beaten, maybe he would have turned out differently.
Maybe. I don't know. I kind of doubt it.
Sounds like he needed an ass beating.
I kind of doubt it, though.
Yeah.
I think he would have needed more than one because I think he was he was one of those people that they used to call incorrigible.
Yeah.
Like he was just like a delinquent. It seemed like he was just a delinquent. Maybe that wouldn't have happened if his dad hadn't died when he was so young, and if he'd had like a more positive male role model. Maybe.
I don't think so.
But
I think it's genetic.
I don't know. Yeah, I kind of doubt it. I kind of feel like he would have just gone this way regardless. That he would have just found some other excuse. So, all right. So after that, the girl that he was dating for 2 weeks, apparently they, she was one of the nurses that took care of him when he had appendicitis. Apparently they parted on good terms. She gave him $80, which was however much in modern money.
Probably about 200.
That's probably like a lot of money. So she gave him a lot of money. And then he went on his merry way. And then at the end of June of 1966, his brother-in-law, Gene, again took him to the National Maritime Union to find like another berth on another ship because he'd been kicked off the first one. Because, like I said, these people are just like going out of their way to help him help his ass out. Now, so while he's at the National Maritime Union hiring hall in Chicago, while he's there, like getting his new seaman's card or whatever, like looking for postings or whatever, this was only like a block away from one of these townhouses that was used to house student nurses from the South Chicago Community Hospital, which if you know anything about Richard Speck, you'll know where this is going. So
yeah,
he was only like a block away at the time.
It's kind of, the story's kind of forming in my head. I know what's going on. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go. Yeah. He's realizing that he's hopeless. Yes, me.
It really does seem like he's come to the end of his rope at this point.
He knows he's a fuck up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that there's like no point in continuing to pretend.
It's almost kind of like suicide what he does next, I think. Go ahead.
Yeah, I get that idea. So July 8th, 1966, Gene drives him to the NMU hiring hall to pick up his seaman's card. He's registering for a berth on a ship. Now, he thought that had like more seniority than him, which was a berth on the SS Flying Spray, which was going to South Vietnam. So he goes back to Martha and Jean's apartment and stays there over the weekend. Now, by the time Monday comes around, his sister and brother-in-law are pretty much sick of him just like laying around on the couch and not getting a job despite all their best efforts. So they're just like, okay, well, you have to just get out of here. We will help you one last time, but that's, we've come to the end of our rope pretty much. So he packs his bags. Gene drives him to the hiring hall. Again, it's like, just wait and see. Like, maybe they have a job for you, but you can't stay at our house anymore. You're just disrupting our lives and just laying around our couch and being a bum. So he waited around for a little while, but didn't get anything. So then he goes and stays at some rooming house for that night. Now he comes back to the hiring hall the next day, and he got an assignment on an oil tanker, which was about a 30-minute drive away. But by the time he gets there, his position has been given to someone else, because I guess he took too long or whatever. So then he drives back to Chicago and finds out that the NMU hall is now closed, so he can't get a position that day. Now, he didn't have enough money to stay anywhere that night, so he ended up like squatting in like an abandoned house or whatever. Now, he basically then goes to back to Martha and Gene, who are finally just like, okay, well, I'm sorry you didn't get anything, blah, blah, blah. He's waiting again in front of the NMU hiring hall. His sister finally gives him $25, and is like, just please get out of our faces. We're just like pretty much sick of dealing with you. So at this point, Richard Speck thinks, oh, well, I have $25, which, like I said, but I guess was a lot of money back then. So he's like, why bother waiting around for work because I have $25? I'm just going to go and fucking drink on this shit.
Yeah.
So he just proceeds to a tavern that's a little way down the street and just pretty much drinks all day. Now, at this point, okay, so what he ended up doing this day, like before the crime that he is best known for occurred, he actually spends this whole entire day drinking in taverns. Now, not only that, but he has also started following this woman named Ella Mae Hooper, who was 53 years old. And she had also been going bar to bar, you know, because obviously she's made some terrible life choices. So she's been, like, going from bar to bar. So he's following her, like, all day. Like, she'll go to the next bar, he'll go to the next bar. You know what I mean? Now, at some point, he confronts her and forces her at knife point to go to his room. He was staying at a room at the Shipyard Inn, raped her, and stole the .22 caliber revolver out of her purse. So then he goes back to drink at another tavern.
She didn't go to the cops?
I don't know if she did or not.
Right.
But yeah, so yeah, he raped her and stole her gun. So then he goes back to his room at about 10:30 p.m., puts on an entirely black outfit, gets his pocket knife, a switchblade, and the gun that he had just stolen from the woman that he had accosted, and walks 1.5 miles west to the nurse's townhouse at 2319 100th Street. Now, this was a townhouse that was used as sort of like a dormitory for like student nurses. They were going through their, you know, their last thing, like before they were becoming nurses. So a lot of them would stay like 2 or 4 to a room or whatever, and it was, you know, like I said, kind of like a dormitory. Now, it kind of differs. Like, it seems like he broke into the apartment building itself by using the pocket knife to like pry open the window, and then like he climbed in, and then apparently he goes to the door of this random apartment and he knocks on it, and when one of the women answered the door, he pretty much flashed a gun in her face and said, "I'm coming in." Now, at this stage, he later claimed that he was like so high on drugs and so drunk that he didn't remember what happened, but I don't know, I'm kind of doubting
I don't
it.
believe that. He can pry his way through a fucking window.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But he's
I
too
wouldn't
drunk
be able
to know
to do
what the hell's
that when I
going
was
on.
drunk, for real.
I wouldn't give a shit. I'm drunk. I don't give a shit. Ah, fuck that shit. I'm going
That's
to
what I
sleep.
mean.
Yeah.
So,
No. He's hell bent on what he's doing, and he's not
Yeah.
as drunk as he's saying he is.
and like you said, it just seems like everything had come to a head at this point. Like, his sister and brother-in-law had kicked him out. He wasn't able to get a job after several days of trying.
If you ask me, he's going out in a blaze of glory.
That's definitely what it seems like. I mean, it seems like he just doesn't have any hope that his life is going to get any better. Like I said, and I'm not like making excuses for the dude, but
He hasn't had any prime trim, and he knows there's good-looking girls in there. He's going to get some.
Yeah,
and then he's going to go kill himself or be killed by the cops.
Yeah.
Or end up in prison.
By all accounts,
because
he
can't
has been
take this shit anymore.
By all
That's
accounts,
what
he
it
has
sounds
been watching this place because,
Right.
like I said, this whole townhouse, this whole apartment complex was used by that college, like, to house their nursing students. So he had been kind of watching. They were all in their early 20s, so he'd been like watching them coming and going. So
that's a prime feeding ground for a rapist, and he's already raped people. So that's,
Yep.
That's all it is. He's going out in a blaze of glory.
Yep, that's exactly what
Rape
this is.
Fest. What year was this?
1966.
Rape Fest 66. That's what he's going to do.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So he comes in. Now, all of them weren't, like, he ended up actually, in the end, he actually ended up killing 8 women that were all staying in this one apartment. Now, all of them were not present when he first came in. Like, some of them came in, like, Gloria Davy, she actually came in a little bit later, like, after he had already come in and, like, kind of tied everyone up and got everyone subdued. She had been out on a date with her fiance, and she came in later, and then he took her kind of under this. The creepy thing about this is that he was in there for like 4.5 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
Like, he had them all tied up. He was obviously, threatening them with the gun and saying what he was doing. But for a long time, because one woman did survive, but she was saying for a long time he just kind of sat there and smoked and talked to them. Now, I think what ended up happening was that because the women had been trained as nurses and they had taken like a lot of psychology classes, and their whole thing was like, we have to like calm people down because obviously people were like in a lot of distress. So they thought they might be able to like calm him down or talk him out of it. So they were trying to do that for like a lot of the time that he was in there.
I'm sure he got off on that, though.
Probably.
This is the same thing that Bundy did, basically,
Yeah.
when he went into the sorority house.
Yeah.
Yeah, he killed a bunch of them there, though, too.
He did, yeah. And this is a very similar thing. This is
Yeah.
like one night that he did that shit. Now, what fucking Richard Speck ended up doing was that, like I said, he had them all tied up with like strips of bed sheets and shit like that. He would like take each of them like into the next room and like rape and kill them like one by one.
Yeah. The other ones didn't know what he was doing. So
No, they didn't.
That helped him do what he's to
They
get
didn't
this
know what
done.
he was doing.
Had they known he was killing them one by one, they would have fought.
Yeah.
You know.
That's the thing. And like the thing about it too is that the first one he took was this woman named Pamela Wilkening, and like I said, they were all in their early 20s. Now apparently he takes her into this room and she did fight him. She spit in his face. She said, I know what you look like. I'm going to identify you. She was like really mad.
Bad thing to say.
And true, but like I said, you can see like why she would be upset about it.
Yeah.
Now apparently while he was attacking her, two other student nurses who lived in the apartment came in. I think it was Marianne Jordan and Suzanne Ferris. I think those were the two that came in. So that kind of like interrupted him like mid-attack. So that like made him even angrier. So he ended up pretty much, he didn't rape all of them, but he raped a significant portion of them. But all of them did end up dying. He usually stabbed them or, strangled them and did rape them. Gloria Davy actually ended up getting the worst of it. I believe she was the last one killed. She was strangled, raped, and also sodomized. One of the other women was also, he actually like slit her throat so deeply that she was almost decapitated. So, like I said, this was like a several hour, he would take them into different rooms. If you see, there's like a really disturbing, like I watched a fucking documentary about this. There's a really disturbing like little drawing of the apartment because it was a pretty big place with like a bunch of different rooms and stuff, and they show like where all the bodies were because he would take them into like different rooms.
Yeah.
So like I said, the girls that were in the main room, they were tied up and they didn't really know what was going on. So I mean, I'm sure they imagined that it was something bad, but I think that initially, I'm not sure if he initially went in there to kill them. I think he just went in there to rape and rob them because he did take all their shit. Like one of the things he did was he went through all their purses. He asked them for all their money. So he did like collect all their stuff. So maybe they thought that he was just going to rob them and maybe he was going to rape them and then he would leave. So maybe that's why, you know what I mean? So maybe that's why they didn't fight back as much as they might have.
Maybe he thought he was going to rape them and rob them. But I think
And
after
then
that
once he
first one, he's like,
that
nah.
spit in his face. That's what I mean. I
He's
feel like
no,
he
I'm
just
having
got
to kill
pissed.
these women because there's too many.
There's
of them.
too many, and there's too many witnesses. Because
Right.
this was like this was like 8 or 9 women, like all in one
Right.
room that he's like trying to keep, like, you know what I mean, to under control.
Right, because you can't control them all.
Right. Now, significantly, as it happened, whether or not, I'm not sure if Richard Speck just couldn't count or if he didn't know what was going on or whatever, but one of the women actually managed to roll under a bed. And she just stayed under there, and she lived.
Well, they all looked the same to him, and there was a bunch of them,
I
and he was
guess.
just trying to get them, and you know what I mean? Fucking one thing, he forgot.
I guess so.
Yeah.
And like I said, maybe he was fucking high. I don't know. But
I
while
don't
he
think
was,
so. I don't
while,
think so.
Yeah,
I think he was pretty lucid.
I don't
actually.
think he was as drunk or as high as
No.
he claimed to, because he said, "Oh, I don't even remember."
He's
That's what
trying
he
to
said
make
at
that as an
first.
excuse.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Because when they talked to him later, he seemed to remember pretty good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So while he was in the other room with one of the other victims, she just like rolled into the bed and hoped he wouldn't notice, and he didn't. So she actually survived. Her name was Corazon Amorau.
Filipino girl, I think.
She was, yeah. 3 or 4 of them were Filipino. That was
Yeah.
like a pretty common thing. A lot of them were becoming nurses. So she stayed under there, until he had taken all the other ones into the other rooms, and she didn't really know what had happened. But then, like, after he left, she rolled out from under the bed and saw that they were all dead. She opened the window and started screaming that they were all dead, and like
Right.
somebody came and like called the police. Now, police were able to find 2 fingerprints in the apartment where the 8 women were killed. One was kind of smudged and one was like more clear. They were able to later match these to Richard Speck because, like I said, he had a very long criminal history. Also, the one survivor of the massacre was able to provide a very detailed composite sketch of the perpetrator to the police, which, if you see it, looked very much like Richard Speck really looks. Now, it so happened that 2 days after the murders, Richard Speck was actually identified as the perpetrator by another guy. He was a drifter named Claude Lunsford. And he had been drinking with Richard Speck at this apartment, at this hotel called the Star Hotel on West Madison Avenue. And this guy saw a sketch in the paper and said, hey, that looks just like Richard Speck. So he called the cops. Now, apparently the cops didn't take this call all that seriously. I don't know why. I don't know if it was just because the guy was homeless or whatever. I don't think he was homeless, but he was just like living in hotels or whatever. Now, while Richard Speck was staying in this hotel, however, he actually attempted suicide, which goes along with your
going out like a
theory
kamikaze.
of that's how he was. Yeah, he was just like come to the end of his rope, so he was going to go out in a blaze of glory or whatever. Now, he like broke open a bottle and tried to slash his arms or slash his wrists open with it. Now, the clerk at the front desk of the Star Hotel called in the emergency, and they came and got him and took him to the hospital. And it so happened that when the surgeon that was attending to him like wiped away the blood, they saw the tattoo on his arm that said "Born to Raise Hell," and he remembered that the woman that had survived the nursing school, the apartment massacre, had said he had a tattoo that said "Born to Raise Hell" on his forearm. And so the police knew where he was. He was obviously in the hospital, so they came and arrested him. So now, at the time, Richard Speck said he had no idea what had happened. He couldn't remember anything about that night. I was so drunk. I was so high. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, he's bullshit.
Yeah, so... But they said that he did, while he was at the Cook County Hospital, they said that he did confess the crime to a doctor there. Now, they wouldn't let the doctor testify at the ensuing trial because they said, Speck was sedated at the time he made that confession, so it could be questioned, blah, blah, blah. But it turned out that they didn't really need the confession because they had, the woman that had survived, and she had got a very good look at his face, and, she had seen what had happened, so they kind of had her testimony. Now, interestingly, they had to move his trial to Peoria, Illinois, because it was getting too much, publicity in Chicago where it had happened. Now, I loved this when I saw this in the documentary. The sole survivor of the massacre, Cora Amaro, she's on the witness stand, and they asked her, the attorney, as they do, they said, "Do you see the man in the courtroom that did it?" Blah blah blah. And the guy said, "Well, I expected her to just point to him." She didn't just do that. She got up, got out of the witness box, got right up in his face and pointed right at his face.
Yeah.
And said, "This is the man."
Right, yeah.
Right in his fucking face. And I said, "Man, you go, girl."
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a very dramatic. And they said that her testimony was pretty much crucial to getting him convicted. They also had his fingerprints that matched and everything like that.
It's just a rare situation. I mean, a random motherfucker walks into a damn place that has a bunch of nurses living there, kills 8 of them.
Yeah.
And then walks out.
Yep.
It's rare. Very rare. That
shit
doesn't happen. It didn't even happen back in the crazy days of the United States.
I mean, shit like that did happen.
It happened this time.
Yeah.
But it wasn't normal.
Yeah.
That shit was never
thankfully.
normal. Yeah.
Thankfully.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was not only the fingerprint match, but also it was pretty much her testimony that kind of cemented. So it only took 49 minutes for the jury to give him a death penalty. Now, he did get the death penalty at first, but because that the Supreme Court had that thing where they put a stay of execution because they, for a little while they ruled the death penalties unconstitutional. So then, Speck's sentence got commuted to, I think he ended up getting 8 successive life sentences, which I think amounted to maximum 1,200 years. So they were never letting him out, even though he was eligible for parole, but he just never got it. Now, I wanted to mention a little bit that there's been, and I think this is still kind of a misconception nowadays, that Richard Speck had XYY syndrome, or an extra chromosome.
Yeah.
Because for a while in the 1960s, there was some mistaken research that seemed to suggest that XYY males were more prone to criminal behavior.
Yeah.
And like I said, there didn't seem to be like a lot of other symptoms of this particular symptom, like this, they tended to be quote unquote taller than average, or they had like a lot more acne than average. They had like learning disabilities, like not anything super noticeable, but like, enough that, so there was like a lot of brouhaha about that. And for a long time, Richard Speck got identified as having this, and that's what made him a criminal.
Right.
But later on, that was actually debunked. One, he was not XYY, he's completely normal. And two, even men that are XYY, and it's actually more common than you think. It's 1 in 1,000 male births, I think. You can't prevent it. It's just like a genetic mutation. It doesn't have anything to do with the parents or anything like that. It just kind of happens every now and then. But it doesn't necessarily increase criminal behavior. They said all it is, it's like sometimes the guy tends to be taller. They're like not like freakishly tall, but 6'1", 6'2", which is not, like I said, it's not that unusual. Sometimes they tend to have more acne than usual. Sometimes they tend to have a little more learning difficulties than usual. But other than that, they don't really seem to have any problems. And with, special schooling and, just a little bit of extra help, they seem to do fine. They have normal fertility and everything like that. So, the concept of the XYY male being like the criminal phenotype. And for a while, like Richard Speck was like, oh, he's the XYY man. He was the one that they pointed to. And sometimes that still turns up in like some older genetics textbooks and stuff like that, that he was like the, the type that they pointed to when they were talking about that. But it's not true. Like he didn't, one, XYY is not as bad as they made it seem like. And two, Richard Speck was not XYY. He was completely genetically normal.
Yeah, I remember in Alien 3, the prison that fucking Ripley ended up falling into, it was all XYY chromosome male prison. Yeah. It was bullshit though.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's not. They just tend to have like a little more learning
taller,
difficulties.
More accurate, and then
that's
learning
all.
Disabilities.
It's not, and they said as long as it's identified and like you can give them a little.
And they can have normal children.
Yeah, if you just give them a little extra help. Like I said, it's nothing to do with like they don't inherit it from their parents or anything like that. It's just a random genetic mutation. It can't be prevented or anything like that. But it's not as bad. It doesn't make them any more likely to be criminals or anything like that. So, as I said, when in 1972, when the Supreme Court ruled the death penalty unconstitutional, Speck's sentence was commuted to life in prison, or 8 consecutive sentences. Now, he actually was eligible for parole. His first parole hearing took place in 1976. He also had 6 subsequent hearings, the last of which was in 1990, but of course, he never got it. Now, while he was in prison, he was actually in a prison he was first in Stateville Correctional Center in Crest Hill, Illinois. He was actually given the nickname Birdman because reportedly he had either 1 or 2 sparrows that had flown into his cell and he kept them as pets. Now, one source that I read said that when he was told that he was not allowed to keep the bird or birds, that he threw them into an oscillating fan and killed them. So, that's nice. But while he was in prison, they said he was not a model prisoner because he was real into like smuggling shit into the prison, like drugs, cigarettes. He would put raisins in jars and he would like stick them like in the toilet tubes. Like he was making, hooch. He was like letting them ferment. Yeah. So he was doing a lot of that kind of shit. But they said other than that, he pretty much kept to himself, just kind of like collected stamps, listened to music and stuff. They said that they gave him like some work to do because he seemed like they let him paint the cells and all that kind of shit, and that seemed to keep him occupied. Now, when they interviewed him later on, the very famous thing about this is that, one, he got interviewed, if you guys have seen Mindhunter, which we talked about before on the Ed Kemper show, Speck was one of the 36 criminals that the FBI, the nascent behavioral sciences unit interviewed, like in an attempt to get some insight into how to catch serial killers and mass murderers and shit like that. But the special agents who were at the center of this, Johnny Douglas and Robert Resler, they both said that Richard Speck didn't seem to have any particular insights into his own behavior, and he wasn't like super helpful in that regard because he just seemed like a big dummy. Yeah. Like I said, at first he said he didn't remember anything, and he said at first that if he had it to do all over again, as in the, the apartment massacre, he said, oh, I'm kind of sorry as hell about that. If I had it to do all over again, it would just be a burglary. I wouldn't have done that and shit like that. But he said some different shit later on.
He didn't give a shit.
No, he really didn't.
No.
And he did admit that later on. Now, famously, in 1996.
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
Now, I want you people to pay close attention to this.
Yeah, this is some crazy shit. So in 1996, Bill Curtis, who was a Chicago television news anchor and is actually he's on he hosts like a whole shit ton of like different true crime shows. You will know him if you see him, if you don't recognize his name. He got a bunch of videotapes. What is it, Dennis?
Oh, no, Dennis is looking around.
Oh, okay. I thought he was about to say
he's listening. He's listening.
Okay. Okay.
You're going to see how you're going to deliver. He's putting his ear over here. Yeah, he's seeing how you're going to deliver
So Bill Curtis gets a bunch of videotapes in the mail from this anonymous attorney. These had been made in Stateville Prison in 1988. Now, they showed them in front of the Illinois State Legislature. Now, what was going on in this shit? Not only were a lot of the inmates openly doing drugs, and we're talking about like piles of cocaine, openly giving oral sex to one another. They were just like giving each other money, buying drugs and stuff. So they were trying to show that it's like, look at the shit that's going on in the prison. It's like there's no one's watching them. It's like no one really gives a shit what they were doing. So they show Richard Speck, who was sitting in there with this other inmate.
He was dressed like a woman, too.
Well, he had like normal clothes on at first, like just like a regular sweatshirt. And he looked like completely different. Like his face was like super wide. His nose was super wide.
Richard Speck became a woman.
Well, that was probably... He didn't look like a woman, though. He looked like a drunk is what he looked like. Like his face, which was, like I said, all pockmarked and shit like that. But as he got older in prison, he gained some weight. His face got a lot wider. His nose got really big. I'm guessing that's from the drinking. And also, he grew a pretty nice set of breasts. Now, there is some controversy over whether it was just he got fat and developed some moobs, because, I mean, he did gain a lot of weight, like he did get pretty pudgy in prison.
Yeah.
But some have said that, well, they snuck in female hormones so he could take them so that he could become a queen bee in prison. He didn't want to get killed, because he was a rapist and he was a murderer, and apparently, he was afraid for his life in this prison because he had been threatened by other inmates. So he thought that reportedly, he thought that by turning himself into a more feminine, so that other prisoners would, he would make himself more valuable and keep his ass from getting killed.
You have to understand something. Some men are not men deep down. Unlike me. And when he gets into a prison type environment, he wants to become the woman he always wanted to be. Isn't that right, Jenny?
Perhaps so.
Yeah.
Now, he did say, I mean, when they interviewed him on this particular videotape, because this is a pretty long videotape, he did say they asked him, it's like, do you like getting fucked by men? And he's like, oh yeah, absolutely. And it's like, have you always liked getting fucked by men? He's like, sure.
Couldn't keep the dick out of his mouth.
Yeah, and like I said, that was on the videotape. I mean, obviously the one that turned up
on guys on a fucking video.
On the video. It's like obviously the one that the bits of it that they showed on the biography show didn't have that. Yeah. But they did describe that that's what happened in it. Now, interestingly, his psychiatrist, or a guy that had done like a lot of psychiatric work with him, his name was Dr. Marvin Zaporin, I guess is how you pronounce his name. He wrote a book about him afterward. He thought that not only was the quote-unquote turning into a woman, like I said, he still didn't look like a woman. He just looked like a fat old man.
It was a metaphysical woman. It was a mystical woman.
And he had in the video, like the other guy says, "Oh, do you have the blue panties on?" And he's like, "Yeah." And then the guy behind the camera says, "Oh, can we see him?" Yeah. So he takes his pants off and he's got like blue underwear on. They weren't like frilly or nothing. They just looked like. I mean, they could have been men's underwear, honestly, or they could have been a men's bathing suit. It didn't look like super feminine.
There's not much choice in prison.
That's what I'm saying. So it's like
it's all imagination.
It's
all imagination.
So his psychiatrist thought that not only was this maybe a survival mechanism, like to keep his ass from getting killed, he's like, hey, if I turn myself into or what passes for a woman in prison, then I'll have value. and, you know, therefore, and I'll suck dudes' dicks and stuff, and therefore I won't get beat up or killed. But his psychiatrist also seemed to think that there might have been an aspect, however unconscious, that Richard Speck was punishing himself by turning himself into a woman like one that he had victimized his whole entire life. But not saying that he was aware of that that's what he was doing, but the psychiatrist thought that there was an aspect of that going on as well.
I don't think that's what it is.
Well, there could be more than one
I
thing.
think what the deal was, let's go back to the suicide thing. He knew that he was a failure, okay?
Yeah.
And he was going to fucking go out in a blaze of glory and get a bunch of women and then be killed or die or kill himself or go to prison and end his fucking miserable life. But he ended up in prison.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to be who he was, so he wanted to be something new. So he killed the old Richard Speck.
Yeah.
And became a new Richard Speck, who was a woman.
Yeah.
And in prison, he could have a future as a woman.
Yeah.
You know.
Even though, like I said, he didn't look anything like a woman.
No, but yeah.
I didn't even realize because he's just sitting there looking like a fat old guy, like in his sweatshirt or whatever. And then he took his thing off, and I'm like, huh, what big moves he has. Like, not.
He went transgender.
It didn't look. It didn't look like women's boobs. It just looked like a fat man with.
You
big
might
boobs.
not think that he was transgender,
but in prison.
Well,
the standards are different, obviously.
And in his mind, he was transgender.
Yeah.
And
even though he did not look feminine.
He wasn't Richard Speck anymore. That guy was dead. He's this new woman.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Because he did say, like, when they asked him on this video, he said, if they only knew how much fun I was having, they'd turn me loose.
Yeah.
And
like a kid in a candy house.
And I saw that, like, one guy, I can't remember who it was, but one guy, like, on the documentary I was watching said, you know what? If a hurricane came and blew down that prison, Richard Speck is the only one that wouldn't leave.
Yeah.
That wouldn't escape. Because he liked it in there. He had status. Everyone knew who he was.
Imagine if you were a dude and you got locked up in an all-girls school.
Yeah.
Would you think that was punishment? No.
Yeah.
So let's just say you're a transgender and you're in a prison, then you're going to be the most popular girl in town.
Yeah.
In his mind.
Although, like I said, I mean, I guess he just did that. Yeah, because of his situation. Yeah, because of his situation,
it's
obviously.
Like, prison is like a parallel universe. You know what I mean?
Clearly.
It requires lots of imagination.
Yeah.
Especially if you're doing these long...
But like I said, I saw the dude. It's like that's a lot of imagination.
Especially when you're dealing with dudes that have life sentences and shit. You know what I mean? They're all crazy.
And that was the justification that he gave, too, for, like, doing some of the other shit. Like I said, like, making hooch and... you know, like smuggling in cigarettes and whatnot. He's like, what are they going to do to me? I'm already in here for 1,200 years. They're never letting me out. So, you know.
Speck was a failure of a man.
Yeah.
So he became a woman.
Yeah.
In prison.
And he was also probably a failure at that, too.
Well, who knows? Because it depends on how, your opinion.
I guess so.
You know what I mean?
But they did ask him,
maybe there are some dudes in prison that saw the female
that thought
Speck
he was beautiful.
and it was just the woman of their dreams. You know what I mean?
I guess so.
Yeah,
like I said,
beautiful.
their standards are very different.
Just fucking, walking down the fucking hallway arm in arm in front of all the cells and the cell, but everybody just sporting her on his arm like fucking a jock and a cheerleader. Just like walking down. Got her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like you said, it's like a parallel universe.
If you think it's a world of imagination. Just like Willy Wonka.
I suppose so. So, on this same videotape, they did ask Richard Speck why he had killed those 8 women. Now, like I said, originally he had said that he didn't remember doing that, but obviously that was bullshit. Now, frustratingly, maddeningly, all he said as an answer to that question was, it just wasn't their night. That's what he said.
Yeah, well, he couldn't stop himself.
He just said it wasn't their night.
Yeah.
And then he went on to say, they said, well, did you feel anything about it? He said, they said, how did you feel while you were doing it or after you did it? He said, like I always felt, I had no feeling. Yeah. If you're asking me if I felt sorry, no.
He's a psychopath.
Yeah. He seemed to have like no,
that's
like described like that night, like what he happened. Yeah. And he said, I think it was Gloria Davy that he was talking about. And he basically just said, oh, I just like flashed the knife at her and said, get naked, bitch. And then the other inmate like laughs at that. Like they both laugh at it like it's the funniest thing ever. It's like so creepy.
Most psychopaths kind of report that they don't have much emotions.
Yeah, I guess not.
About what they're doing. It's like, yeah, it's no big deal.
That's just, it's like really creepy. It's really creepy, and it's like creepy to see him like joking about it like with another guy. Yeah. They're just like joking about it.
Yeah.
So Richard Speck actually ended up dying in prison of a heart attack on December 5th, 1991, one day before his 50th birthday. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy.
Damn, so he died young, actually.
He did die young, thankfully. Well, his dad died at 53, so I'm guessing that kind of ran in the family.
Yeah.
Now, when he actually was cremated, no one wanted his body. His family was no, we don't want that shit. They ended up having to, they cremated him, and then only, I think only 3 people, like, know where they scattered the ashes, just because they, they're like,
it doesn't matter.
We said some prayers and, like, threw them out. Now, one thing I have heard, though, like I said, even though there was, some erroneous reports that he was XYY, I had heard that after he died, they actually did an autopsy of his brain and did find some anomalies in there that they had never seen before. Apparently, it was the hippocampus, the memory area of your brain, and the amygdala, which is, your rage and all your emotions and everything, and that these 2 parts of the brain, like normally they're pretty distinct, like in a regular brain, but in his they were kind of like overlapping one another, which they thought was very unusual, and they had never seen that before. So
grew up a pissed off kid.
So I guess so. So the guy that discovered this, whose name was Jan Lietsma, he was a neuropathologist, and he had actually like taken some slides of like things, and he showed it to like other surgeons and like other brain surgeons and stuff, and they said, yeah, that is super weird, but then they never really followed up on it. Like a lot of the tissue samples were lost, and like I said, his body ended up being cremated, so they didn't really go any farther with that. But they did say that that was like one of the, as far as I know, that's the only time they ever found that, like in a criminal, where those 2 parts of the brain were like overlapping. So that's probably pretty much it about.
I don't think there's
Richard
much
Speck.
to the guy.
I don't. Yeah, it's like it just seems like there's been like a bunch of shit made about him. There was a movie called Speck that came out in 2002, which I actually haven't seen. The Charles Bronson movie 10 to Midnight is kind of is a little bit about him, like loosely based on that.
He was a white trash kid. Fucking he had a rough upbringing, did stupid shit, and died. Didn't live long.
Well, and also killed 8 people. Well, actually, possibly 9 people, and raped some other people.
Well, that was the stupid shit that he did, and then he didn't live long.
Stupid.
You're talking about a guy who died by 50.
Yeah.
In prison. So
yeah, day before he turned 50, he died.
Not a successful life.
By any measure.
I think the crime that he was famous for, murdering those 9 girls, was actually kind of like going supernova. I think it was like a suicide.
Well, it did seem like that, because as soon as like a day or 2 after he did that, like he did attempt suicide. I don't know if it was just because, I'm out of here, or if he thought he was going to get caught.
He knew he was a loser and he wasn't going to go anywhere. He couldn't even hold a fucking simple job.
Yeah, so. It seemed like he had really come to like this impasse in his life. And I guess, like I said, it was one thing that apparently he had said to numerous people in his life, that he was going to like make headlines one day, or he was going to shock the world one day. So I guess he felt like, the end was coming, so he had to do something big, quote unquote.
Well, you're dealing with an inadequate man, and he's trying to fucking do something that he could be recognized for.
Yeah, because he can't do anything like good or cool or anything like that. So it's like,
it's a way of lashing out at the world because you're a fucking loser.
Yeah. I feel like that happens a lot in these serial killer cases. It's like they can't get recognition
for something positive,
anything positive, or like any, positive attributes.
There's also kind of like this dynamic of fucking what do you call it? Ego. Yeah. Where they have to have this attention.
Yeah.
That they're important.
Yeah. They can't just like, they can't just like
be in obscurity.
Just be.
Yeah.
Just like being regular person.
Yeah, you gotta like, look, man, nothing really that special about you. Just go ahead and live your little life and fucking go ahead
and just find happiness where you can find it, man. You don't gotta be famous or nothing like that. It's all good.
It's not the way it is.
Yeah.
Not the way it is for them.
Well, obviously they can't live like that.
Because they had greater expectations for themselves.
Yeah. I feel like everybody does to an extent. Like a lot of people have like greater expectations that they feel like they didn't meet. But most people just move on and deal with it.
Or at least try to fucking make something happen.
Yeah.
You
Or
know
it's
what I
like, but even if they do, and they don't succeed, it's like
Yeah.
most people, like most normal, healthy people,
You could still live a decent life.
can still live a
Yeah.
decent life and find happiness and,
Yeah.
just like not
Well, I guess when you
kill people.
I guess
it's
when
not
you're-
that hard.
I
Seriously.
guess when you're dumb like that, though, that's not enough.
Yeah. Suppose not.
Yeah, you have to do something that's looking heinous.
Well, he
stand
did,
out.
so good job, bud.
Because you'll never be as awesome as you really
That
want
was
to be.
facetious, in case anybody wanted to say
Trying to
anything.
be, it's kind of like a trying to be more than what you really are type of situation.
Yeah.
Instead
Well,
of
yeah,
just-
and like I said, I feel like that's
Yeah.
pretty common with all of these. It's like, well, if I can't do anything awesome, then I have to be like the biggest monster, and then
Yeah.
everyone has to be afraid of me.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, what do you think about that, Dennis? You should know something about that.
Well, you have to understand that excellence like me is a fucking very rare occurrence.
That's
Okay.
true. I'll give you
And
that.
they're trying to do the kind of stuff that I do, but of course they don't have the talent. You have to be an artist, and
Sure.
and you have to be a good man, and you have to have the discipline to hold a job, and to raise a family, and to be a real man. And they can never be a real man, not around me. Around me, he could be maybe a woe man, but not a real man.
Oh, little Tom came through there.
Yeah. Well, I picked that up from Tom. Tom isn't wrong.
You guys are hanging out too
Yeah,
much,
yeah,
I think.
I'm a big fan of Tom.
Oh, shit. This is getting weird, you guys. Oh, my God, Sophie.
I'm sitting back up here in my
Look
cell.
what you did.
Me and my cellmate listening to Tom, I know what he's talking about. Jenny, stop fucking with me.
Okay, I will. Just like, now, I have
It
to,
was a good show.
Okay.
Just let it roll.
I have to have him in my office, and he'll be, like, back there. What if he, like,
Yeah,
comes
yeah.
to life and, like, stabs me in the back one day while I'm working or something when I'm not paying attention? You be good, little buddy. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we're going to wrap up this show about Richard Speck, and like I said, we had a lot of insight from Dennis Rader, which is always a plus.
Dennis motherfucking Rader.
He's always a big help, and it's always a pleasure to have you on the show, Mr. BTK.
Yes. I bind, I torture, and I kill.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
It's sexy. It's very sexy.
God. All right. So that'll do it for episode 162. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Remember, if you like the show, like, share, subscribe on all your social media. If you'd like to support the show financially, you can go to our Patreon page, or you can go to our blog at 13o'clockpodcast.wordpress.com, and there's a link to a PayPal account if you'd like to give a one-time donation. Remember, we have our regular episodes come out every Tuesday. We got movie reviews, old movies every Friday, new movies every Sunday. And if you're a patron, then you get to see all the stuff a day early, so that's super exciting. So check it out if you haven't already, and we will see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.